Chair Heidel, we've unmuted the room, so.
Excellent. Okay, so we're ready to go, Woody?
Give me a break. You guys bring them all down and sit in.
He's on.
Okay, so if we're ready, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the El Dorado County Transportation Commission held this date, February 2nd, 2023. And with that, if you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. In fact, Supervisor Parlin, would you lead him in the pledge there since I'm not present?
Oh, sure, yeah,
Thank you.
and join me for the pledge, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. So we don't normally do roll call as we do in some of the other meetings we participate in, but the participation, the attendance has been noted. So with that, we'll move on to the ceremonial matters, which are election of chair and vice chair. And we're going to open nominations at this point. So would anyone like to nominate an individual to serve as chair or vice chair at this point? Let's do chair first.
Yes, Supervisor Heidel, given that we have a major change in the Transportation Commission in our funding, recognizing that the Federal Highway Correction Action will be changing the way we allocate funding, which will be a very different thing. I'd like to nominate Commissioner Clarici for chair, given his depth of background in SAGOG. He understands those issues as well as his transportation backgrounds. I think he could be very helpful this year as we transition to a new model regarding funding.
Thank you for that. Do we have a second? So we'll elect chair first and then go to vice chair.
I will second.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, Dana, would you conduct a roll call, please?
Commissioner Heidel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner No, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Saragosa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Turnbull, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Parlin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Clarici, how do you vote?
Aye.
Very, very good. Well, congratulations, John.
Welcome
do you
back,
want
John.
Welcome back.
Yes.
It is, I will add that it is an irony. I was the vice chair the year I did not get reelected. And so there's a certain synergy, I guess, in the universe.
Just picking up where you left
That's
off.
true.
Good
That's
job.
right.
It has to
Thank you very
balance.
much, and I'll do my best.
Yeah. So John, do you want to take over now and go ahead and conduct the nomination for vice chair and run the meeting?
Right now. It'll take us.
Turn on your microphone.
And Supervisor Heidel would like to thank you for chairing the commission this last year. We really appreciate you stepping up in that leadership role.
Yeah, thank you. It was my pleasure. I think we had a good year and we're looking forward to another good one, right? So
Right.
with changes.
Okay, it felt weird with the hole there.
Yeah, there you go.
This is better. Oh, when you have real big meetings, these buttons are
Royal push your buttons.
super handy.
We don't,
Super
we don't
handy.
need those. Thank you very much. Let me get situated here real quick. Okay. All right. And so I guess we should take nominations for vice chair.
I'll make a motion that we nominate Wendy Thomas for second vice chair.
Is there a second?
Thank you.
I'll second that.
We have a first and a second. Any other discussion? Any other nominations? Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Turnbull.
Vote, please.
Commissioner Heidel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner No, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Saragosa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Turnbull, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Parlin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Clarici, how do you vote?
Aye.
Well, thank you very much. It'll be an honor.
All righty. Thank God they write this stuff down for you. All right.
Right?
Yeah. So I'm not going to ad lib this one. Here, let's see. So adoption of agenda and consent calendar. Commissioners or staff may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion. Items requested to be removed from the consent calendar shall be removed if approved by the commission. The commission will make any necessary additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda and determine matters to be added to or removed from the consent calendar. So first, does the public wish to comment on the agenda and the consent calendar? Okay, thank you very much. Do we have to ask for the Zoom stuff too? Okay. Do you do that normally? Go ahead. Sorry.
Now taking public comment on the consent calendar. Public comment will, we'll skip the room. Okay. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to comment. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise your hand button. Please voluntarily state your name for the record. There's no public comment.
Okay, thank you. All right.
If there's no changes, I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Do we have
A second?
we have a motion and a second? Roll call vote?
Commissioner Heidel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner No, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Zaragoza, how do you vote?
Aye.
Actually, I messed up. Sorry about that. Commissioner Parlin, how do you vote?
I
Everything's all messed up.
know.
Commissioner Thomas, how do you vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair, excuse me.
No problem.
And Chair Clarici, how do you vote?
Aye. All right, I'm going to ask just a point of order here because I'd like to get this out of the way early. Do I call the item like open forum and then read this thing? So I get to do that. All right. Figure this out. All right, this is our,
It's at your pleasure, Chair Clarici. If you would like Dana to read
what
that.
what have we been doing?
It varies between the county and the city.
Okay, great.
So whatever you would like it's your pleasure.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Okay. Opening up the open forum now. So this is the open mic portion of our show. At this time, any person may comment on any item that is not on the agenda that is within the jurisdiction of this commission. Action will not be taken on any item that is not on the agenda. Items requiring action will be referred to staff and or placed on the next agenda, the next meeting agenda. And please try to follow the golden rule. Okay, so it's Zoom first, then the meeting, or meeting first, then the Zoom?
The public in the room first and then Zoom.
Okay. Is there anybody here that would like, the public that would like to comment on the open comments? Okay, great.
You can do the room too.
That's great. I love that idea. Thank
Okay.
you.
For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to comment. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise your hand button. Please voluntarily state your name for the record. There are no comments.
Great, thank you. All right, business items. Let's see, the executive director compensation, Ms. Gillick.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chair Clarici. I'm Deanne Gillick, General Counsel for the Commission. The action that's requested is an action to approve a step adjustment for the Executive Director from step 6 to step 7 with a total yearly salary of $177,510,000 with existing employee benefits. As you may recall, there was a performance evaluation for the Executive Director last fall. It was a successful positive performance evaluation, and the recommendation is for the step increase to be effective December 26th, which is his anniversary date and was after the review. And with that, I've done the oral announcement as required by the Brown Act, and we can respond to questions or ask for a motion.
So do we have any comments or questions from the commissioners?
Yes, Chair Clarici,
Yes.
I'd just like to recognize that under his leadership, the commission has been extremely successful with your expert staff and your leadership in obtaining just significant amounts of funding for the transportation network in El Dorado County. And also recognizing that you put off, you didn't want salary adjustments for you in order for your staff to be compensated at a higher rate. And so in recognition of your sacrifice and your excellent performance, I heartily support this step.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Those very nice words there. Anyone else have any comments or questions from the commission?
Now taking public comment on item number 5. Public comment will first be taken from those participating in the boardroom and then from those participating through Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to comment. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise your hand button and please voluntarily state your name for the record. Seeing no public comment from the boardroom, now taking public comment from Zoom participants. There is no public comment.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I would like to move approval of this item.
I'll second. Thomas second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Heidel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner No, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Parlin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Saragosa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Turnbull, how do you vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Thomas, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Clarici, how do you vote?
Aye. Thank you very much. I would like to add one thing. I work in this field, I work in this environment, and Mr. Deloria has a stellar reputation. I've been involved in a number of things that he's actually worked on. He was the chair of our Rural Counties Task Force for a while, participates in that. Just an excellent reputation, does very good work and worth every penny. Thank you. All right, number 6, fiscal year 2022-23 overall work program and budget and goals and objectives, amendment number 2. Ms. Thompson.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chair Clarici. This item is to approve Amendment 2 to the fiscal year 22-23 overall work program budget goals and objectives, or the OWP. The OWP and budget is the work plan for EDCTC. A draft and final are required before the start of the fiscal year, and during the year, amendments are prepared to adjust revenue expenditures for new grant funding or add carryover grant funding. EDCTC was recently awarded a $75,000 state highway account grant for additional public outreach for the Greater Placerville Wildfire Evacuation Preparedness, Community Safety and Resiliency Plan. Amendment 2 increases the grant funding and professional services by $75,000. Pension benefits were increased for an additional deposit of $20,000 to be added to EDCTC's California Employers Pension Pre-Funding Trust, which is managed by CalPERS. This account was opened, it was approved at the June 3rd, 2021 commission meeting to be opened with a $50,000. An initial deposit of $30,000 was added to the trust, and Amendment 2 adds the remaining $20,000 to be deposited into the trust account. So the funds in this trust account can be used to make payments towards the unfunded balance or future pension costs. And lastly, staff time was adjusted between work elements based on actual expenditures to date. I'm happy to answer any questions on OWP and budget.
Do you have any questions or comments?
Chair Clarici, if I could just add one point.
By all means.
The $75,000 in state highway account funds that were added to the work program are for the Greater Placerville Wildfire Evacuation Preparedness Plan. That effort, the scope of that has expanded, given that we requested the original grant before the Caldor fire. And now Dan Bolster, Senior Transportation Planner that's managing that, is working with Ken Pimlott from the county's Office of Wildfire Preparedness and Mark Egbert from the Resource Conservation District on their efforts. So that the effort's a much bigger collaborative effort. The $75,000 that we were awarded was not through a typical grant cycle. We actually just asked Caltrans, given that the importance of this project. And I want to thank Jenna Matsumoto from Caltrans, who's here today, for helping us in securing those funds for that additional $75,000 to do additional outreach for that very critical project. So thanks to Caltrans for that.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions or comments on this?
Just a comment, public outreach on this effort is going to be so crucial. So really appreciate Caltrans' partnership on this and helping engage the public on this item.
Yes. Anyone else? Okay. Public comment.
Now taking public comment on item number 6. Public comment will first be taken from those participating in the boardroom and then from those participating through Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to comment. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise your hand button. Please voluntarily state your name for the record. Seeing no public comment from the boardroom, now taking public comment from Zoom participants. There's no comment.
Even after 4 years, some things never change. Thank you very much for that. Let's bring it back here. Any other comments or questions or anything? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
No, move to approve.
Thank you. A second?
Second, Saragosa.
Okay. We have a first and a second. Let's have a roll call again.
Commissioner Heidel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner No, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Parlin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Saragosa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Turnbull, how do you vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Thomas, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Calucci, how do you vote?
Aye. Thank you. Let's see, number 7, the California Association of Councils of Governments. Mr. Deloria.
Thank you, Chair Calucci. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This item is before you today for consideration to appoint a voting delegate to the CalCog group, which is a group of 44 members that represents the 44 members across the state of California. Those members include metropolitan planning organizations, COGs, regional transportation planning agencies such as EDCTC, on a wide variety of issues with a heavy focus on transportation. The CalCog group meets periodically throughout the year, and they also have an annual leadership conference that's held in March. And I attend that with the appointed delegate to CalCog. Commissioner Thomas, Vice Chair Thomas was on CalCog last year, and but the commission, it's the commission's pleasure to delegate another or a representative for this calendar year. So with that, open up for a designation for CalCog.
Okay, thank you. This is one of the few things I haven't done. You did it before?
I was the representative this year.
Okay, can you describe some of like the time commitments and?
Sure. They have, briefings on a regular basis that are Zoom. Although the new meeting laws are potentially problematic for this very, regional forum. It's one of the issues that CalCog is advocating for. And then they have their annual convention in Riverside, March 5th through the 7th. So this last year, the time commitment was not too onerous. Generally, they're on a Friday afternoon from 1 to 3 generally. And then they do have, I think, 2 forums a year.
Yep.
Yes. And so that's the time commitment. I will say I am happy to continue in this capacity. However, the Riverside Regional Leadership Forum is problematic for me because it goes Sunday night through Tuesday. And I have to chair a board meeting on Tuesday. And so why they would do that on Tuesdays is a challenge. So I will not be able to go to the Riverside Convention. So I am very open to if anyone else wants to fill these roles, or I'm happy to continue.
Okay.
So.
That kind of leaves the supervisors out. I mean, Tuesdays are our meeting days. generally
If this
speaking.
forum is critical to go to,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, I would ask the question, is this forum critical? Okay.
No, it's not a critical.
Well, now you've just
You
opened.
heard the answer, John.
We have access to all time and space.
Well, we
now.
know that you're going to be going regardless,
Yes,
right?
so the
Woody?
leadership forum it's a great event. There's a great opportunity to meet other regional leaders across the state. But the information is mostly recorded these days. And so the presentations and the speakers, the information can be shared after the fact.
Well, and I'll actually be, we'll kind of have a representative there from the board. I'm SACOG's representative
Right. Oh,
Oh,
to
good.
that's
CalCog, so I am going to the meeting, so I can wear an EDCTC hat
Yeah,
while I'm
there you
there
go.
as well.
Oh,
so.
All right.
good.
Well,
That might work out. really
And I think
well.
this is
Yeah.
obvious.
Oh, I just want.
Thank you. Thank you for volunteering. That was-
The information, the advocacy at CalCog is very beneficial.
Oh, yeah, no,
very
that much is,
beneficial.
that is not in depth.
Yeah.
But you just indicated we get hats.
I will bring hats for everybody. Yeah, I'm volunteering myself for a lot of things here.
Yes, you are. Okay.
Do I,
We have to make a motion. correct?
yes, we do.
All right, so I'll make a motion. We appoint Michael Saragosa
Very good.
to that commission.
Second.
We have a nomination and a second. I don't believe we need a roll call vote for this. Let's just hear it out. Or do we need a roll call vote?
Of
I'll ask my
course we do.
attorney.
Commissioner Heidel,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, that's right, because he's in. Hawaii.
John's in Hawaii.
Yeah, because I'm remote. You have to,
Bless his.
by
heart.
by the Brown Act, but you don't necessarily, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we need a roll call vote.
Yeah,
since
okay,
there is a
that's fine.
teleconference, and we need an opportunity for public.
Oh, that's right, I'm
Even
sorry.
though we don't anticipate any, we need that opportunity.
Now taking public comment on item number 7. Public comment will be taken first from those participating in the boardroom and then from those participating through Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. For joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to comment. For joining by Zoom, press the raise your hand button and please voluntarily state your name for the record. Seeing no public comment from the boardroom, now taking public comment from Zoom participants.
There is really. Okay, do I need to redo this or can we just go with this motion since we got a little out of
Yeah,
sequence?
the motion's been made.
It's
You
okay,
can
fine.
Take a vote now, yes.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Heidel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner No, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Parlin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Saragosa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Turnbull, how do you vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Thomas, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair Clarici, how do you vote?
Aye. Thank you. All right, number 8, the Federal Advocacy Professional Services Agreement. Mr. Deloria.
Thank you, Chair Clarici, Commissioners. This item is before you today to provide the director with direction regarding our request for proposals for the upcoming year for federal advocacy services. We are currently under contract with David Church and Associates. We have been for the last 3 years. That has been a shared contract between the county of El Dorado, City of Placerville, El Dorado Transit, and the Transportation Commission. I met with Matt Mock, the director of El Dorado Transit, Don Ashton, the CEO of El Dorado County, and Cleve Morris, the City of Placerville city manager. And we unanimously agreed to recommend not going out for another RFP. And I'll explain why. We brought forward the federal advocacy contract or consideration for the contract 3 years ago, given the buzz in DC that earmarks were coming back. And over the last 3 years, we have tried every year for each federal discretionary process. We have requested that our Representative McClintock submit projects, and he does not participate in that earmark process. And so based on that, knowing that we do now have Representative Kiley, but we don't know what his position is on federal earmarks. We are recommending we do not go back out for an RFP. We let the contract expire at the end of March with Mr. Church and Associates. And if there is an issue that comes up, a legislative issue that we collectively want to go after, we would then come back and enter into a contract with a firm to pursue that legislative effort. So that's the staff recommendation. And again, that's made from myself as well as the CAO Don Ashton, Cleve Morris, city manager, and Matt Mock, El Dorado Transit.
Well, thank you very much for that. I have to say, I like David a lot. And so this is a difficult thing, but I understand where it's coming from and I agree with it. But the rest, are there any comments or questions from the commissioners?
I'll make a comment. I think this is the right move. I mean, with the change in Congress to split government, to the fight with the federal debt limit, and the reality is Republicans are going to be looking to cut as much spending as they can. Discretionary spending is going to basically be out the window from the House side anyways. So I think we'd be fighting an uphill battle even if we had a lobbyist on retainer. So I think this is the right move to make.
And Chair Clarici,
Yeah.
I'd also like to echo your sentiments that, just express our gratitude for David Church and Associates for his, advocacy on behalf of El Dorado County and the El Dorado County Transportation Commission and the City of Placerville. I know this area has his heart and that he has, done everything within his purview to represent us, recognizing that it has been an uphill battle in Washington. So just really appreciate his efforts.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions? Okay, great.
Now taking public comment on item number 8. Public comment will first be taken from those participating in the boardroom and then from those participating through Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to comment. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise your hand button. Please voluntarily state your name for the record. Seeing no public comment from the boardroom, now taking public comment from Zoom participants.
Thank you. All right, we'll bring it back. Any more discussion or comments? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay,
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Heidel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner No, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Parlin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Zaragoza, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Turnbull, how do you vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Thomas, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Chair Calucci?
Aye. Thank you. All right, now the information item of our program. Number 9, Caltrans Road User Charge Pilot Project. Mr. Deloria.
Thank you again, Chair Clarucci, Commissioners. This item was requested by Commissioners Thomas and Commissioner Heidel regarding information they received on a road user charge pilot that Caltrans is implementing beginning in March in rural and tribal regions of the state. And we have Lauren Prahota from Caltrans, who's going to give a presentation on this road user charge to talk about that. So Lauren, with that, you could take the stage, please.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. Pleasure to be with you today, even remotely. Woody very kindly invited us to come and share some information with you after presenting it at the rural task force. So what I want to share with you today is some information about an issue that's coming at us in the future, and sorry, just working on sharing my screen here, that we need to start planning for, and what the state's efforts are on that front in terms of planning, and then how you can potentially be involved in that. So, as you know, being transportation-minded folks, the majority of our system, our transportation system, is funded by the state gas tax, federal gas tax as well. Everything that we do in the state transportation-wise, obviously our roads, state highways, county roads, city roads, also transit and other things like that. But as we look towards the future of the gas tax, we're seeing some issues coming up that really are going to undermine its long-term sustainability as a funding source for what we need to accomplish in terms of maintaining the state's transportation system. And these play out in different ways. First off, our fleet as Californians is getting more fuel efficient. This is fantastic in many ways. It saves us money at the pump. But when you're buying less gas to get where you need to go, you're also paying less in gas taxes. And then there's, secondly, those vehicles we all know that don't pay any gas taxes right now because they're using alternative fuels such as electric vehicles. And those are continuing to grow as a percentage of our fleet. And obviously there are state policies in place that are encouraging that growth to continue. Thirdly, we have inflation and the loss of purchase power. Now at the state level, we tried to address that through SB1 when we indexed the state gas tax to inflation. But at the federal level, the federal gas tax has not been increased since the early 90s. And so you've really seen that impact gone down. And as these three play out, what we're seeing overall across the board is that there's an increasing inequity in our existing fuel tax structure that really, as you get this range of vehicles that have different miles per gallon, you have people paying different amounts to use the road. And so you have some, who tend to be research those on either the lower end of the socioeconomic scale, or those potentially in rural areas that have the need to drive larger vehicles for their way of life. They're paying more than their urban counterparts. And you're just getting this growing spread that we're seeing. So what the state is doing is trying to plan ahead and research a new mechanism to collect funding for our transportation system. And that's what I get to head up, is this road charge program. And what a road charge is basically shifting from this per gallon tax that we're paying right now to a per mile tax. So very, very much a user-based fee idea, and kind of similar to what you pay with utilities or things like that. And the way the state is looking at it at the moment is, as a replacement for the gas tax, really just kind of a switching out of that mechanism, not necessarily changing the amount of funding coming in. we would have 1 per mile rate for all passenger vehicles. So again, this is that basic access fee to the transportation system. So everyone's paying the same to use the road and getting some of that current inequity in the gas tax system out. Again, what the goal of this is to stabilize funding, not necessarily change any behavior. Again, that 1 flat fee per mile is not based on time of day or anything like that. It's just a flat per mile charge. And not necessarily looking at changing how our funding is spent. Again, we're already spending it right now. And so we're trying to stabilize that existing funding so all of our efforts can continue both at the state and local level to maintain our transportation system. So just to kind of illustrate my point about how things work now and how that kind of growing stretch between what people are paying. This is just kind of an example of some different vehicles you might see driving the average number of miles a Californian might drive in 1 month. And as you can see, there's a wide range of what these folks are paying to drive the same number of miles. But if you potentially switch to a road charge, that evens out. And so that's bringing kind of this fairness potentially into this new structure that was one thing that we would really like to see. So just an overview of how this would work. So the overall structure that you would kind of term a back office structure is what we envision is a state agency that would have oversight of private third-party account managers. And that account manager would manage the day-to-day interaction between the taxpayer, send them the mileage reporting option to report their mileage, calculate an invoice for the tax due, send the invoice, receive the tax. And at the end of the day, all that gets sent to the state is the number of miles driven and the taxes due. There are a couple of reasons for this. One is efficiency. Keeping administrative costs down. A lot of times there are some businesses out there potentially that are already doing a lot of this work, and so they can add it on. For example, in one of our recent pilots, we paired the collection of a road charge with usage-based insurance. They're already managing individual accounts. They're actually even already collecting mileage as part of their business model. So it's very, very easy for them to just add the tax into their bill, which means it's easier for the taxpayer as well just to pay it in all in one bill. So there's that potential there for really saving on administrative costs. Secondly, just in terms of what the public prefers, they tend to trust private companies with their data more than they do the government. So that's one consideration. And then also just looking to the future, private entities tend to adapt to advances in technologies better than government does. So we want to make sure that the system is flexible and can move into the future and serve us for the long term as a stable funding source for our transportation system. So what the taxpayer experience is much more simple. It's really just interacting with a choice of how to report their miles. And what we envision is a program that has a lot of different options for people to choose from. The reason for this is, again, multiple. One, we have a large range of vehicles in California, from historic vehicles to very advanced. And so these different vehicles may have different capabilities. But also, it's very important on the privacy front. In our society today, we have data everywhere we go, and we have choices about how our data is used or not used. And a good chunk of us, tend to choose the efficiency of what sharing that data allows. We take our phones around with us everywhere we go, when we use the GPS systems and everything, and that's all sharing that data, but we appreciate the efficiency of it. But there's always a trade-off between privacy and efficiency, and different people view that trade-off in different ways. So we really feel it's important to have a range of options ranging from very low tech, which is basically something like a third-party odometer read, where you could go into something similar to a smog check situation and have someone just read your odometer and report it. No tracking, no location technology, nothing like that. Very simple. But then some people may appreciate very high-tech options, such as the in-vehicle telematics that more and more cars coming off the line today have, which naturally report data, all sorts of data, including you can include your location or not. You know, you have that choice, but some people find that more efficient and appreciate that efficiency. So again, we want to have these range of options so that people can make the choice for themselves and the government does not make it for them. So that's the basics of how the program would work. Just looking at the national picture, every state has this issue. The federal government has this issue. And so there's a lot of states that have been looking at road charge as a potential solution to the problem. As you can see on this map, there are 3 states, the ones in yellow, that already have active road charge programs. And then a number of states, the ones in greens, have done pilots, and then a whole bunch more studying the issue. In addition, the federal bill passed last year included a national pilot that we expect to be kind of rolling out this year as the federal government also tests the potential of this concept to replace the federal gas tax. So there's a lot going on this front. Caltrans has done a couple of pilots already, and we have another one coming up, which is really what I wanted to share with you today, just the opportunity to be involved. We are really interested in exploring the impact of this potential system to rural and tribal communities. These communities have unique issues that they live with, and we want to make sure that this system interacts well with those, to have an opportunity for these communities to raise their voice and be at the table while this system is being developed. There are tons of things that happen day to day that, you know, I don't necessarily experience. And so I need input about, okay, this is the reality that I live with. And so how does this system work? I mean, can you adapt it? And I really hate this, or I really love this, and all that kind of stuff. We'll be testing one of the high-tech reporting options in this specific pilot. We really want to dig into GPS technology's decision and whether we can rely on it in determining a very precise tax bill, particularly in the context of rural life, because there can be a lot of time where rural drivers are spending time driving on private roads versus public roads. And when you're driving in a private context, you really should not be paying the tax for that, because no public dollars are going to the maintenance of that road. So we're going to explore whether this is a valuable and reliable tool, particularly in the rural context. And that pilot is going to be coming up. We're going live with that in March. So we're recruiting right now. So we would love to have people sign up and spread the word. And it's just really a chance for you to live with this a little bit. See what it's like for a couple of months. See if you love it. See if you hate it. You know, all experiences are real, right? And we want to gain that feedback of what this looks like in the rural way of life. We are offering participant incentives of up to $250 for anyone who is chosen to participate. You can see there the link on the screen where you can sign up. But we're also just, looking for opportunities to come into communities and talk about this and get feedback about the idea, various concerns, various opportunities. I'm currently going on the state, hitting up a lot of board of supervisor meetings and things like that. But also just regular, community members who don't think about transportation all day long. We want to interact with those folks and see how it works and make sure that they are having an opportunity to have a say as we're thinking about this new solution. So that's just a brief overview of what we're doing and how we hope to have you all involved. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much for that. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think it's a positive thing that Caltrans is looking at the rural impacts.
Yeah.
We've been exploring road user charge. There was a pilot in 2017 that was done. And we work through the Rural Counties Task Force. We've all been concerned about the impacts to rural drivers who typically drive more miles than our urban counterparts who have access to transit and other things. So, as always, one size doesn't fit all. And, we will be advocating for a scalable approach to this once it becomes a reality. So that's all I have.
Well, thank you. Are there any comments or questions?
No, I got a question. Being that the smog program, a lot of that information is done with odometers. you know, and they know how much that vehicle is put on from year to year or every 2 years. And a lot of it, if you, insurance, so all that database is sent to the insurance companies because they can't get away. People can't say, well, I only drive this vehicle 1,000 miles when they put 3,000 miles on it. So they already know. So I think that's a good fit for it through that. But the biggest problem is, how about these vehicles you can't swap, especially electric vehicles. So that's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You know, it's, anyway, is there anybody else? Anybody else want to comment? Oh, I'm sorry. Hi there. Aloha.
Aloha, yeah. So Lauren, my question is in regards to all vehicles being treated the same. Obviously, you have heavy vehicles. Pickup trucks, we know, pay more in vehicle licensing fees and that sort of thing. Is there a consideration of wear and tear on the roads that goes into this? Or is that presumably covered under VLF? Because I mean, a lot of people who drive heavy vehicles really do more damage to the roads than people who drive lightweight vehicles. So it seems like there should be some separation by weight. It's more difficult, but it just seems like that would be a fair process.
Excellent question and very important consideration. So as you note, currently vehicles over a certain weight pay weight fees in addition to the state gas tax to kind of compensate for that extra damage that weight does. Pickup trucks are currently under that requirement unless you have the back of your bed covered. I still haven't figured out why they have that in the vehicle code, but that's what it is. So, you know, looking to switch to a road charge, you know, the question would be, you know, do weight fees remain? I mean, I expect that they would because they're kind of devoted to different things than the gas taxes. But again, that'd be a discussion in the legislature. But one of the things about weight is, you know, we talk about one rate for all passenger vehicles. I think commercial vehicles will potentially look different than the passenger vehicle weight, because really where you get to the difference is about 10,000 pounds. The relationship between damage to pavement and bridge and its impact to the roadways is actually not linear, it's actually exponential. So what that means is that the lower rate ranges, there's really not that much difference in the impact to the road. And that's pretty much 10,000 and below. And that's pretty much most passenger vehicles. So it's when you get into the, you know, 26, 50, 80,000 pound trucks and above that you see on the highway system a lot, that's where that weight factor comes in. But so there's a lot of things to think about, but we do have to recognize that those trucks are already paying weight fees in recognition of that weight factor.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I mean, I wasn't aware of the exponential relationship and how much it increases above 10,000 pounds. That's an interesting dynamic, because you would think it would be weight more linear than an exponential. But anyway, just interesting data.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, which, you know, we have many engineers at Caltrans think deeply about these things. I do not, 'cause I'm not an engineer, but, you know, a lot goes into it in terms of the frequency and how things bend and everything. But yeah, I promise I've worked closely with our asset manager to be like, okay, you know, how is weight a factor in this, and how, again, that fairness of all these different factors, we need to balance it out.
Thank you.
Yes.
Lauren, thank you for your presentation this afternoon. We appreciate the information because I know it's something that we are all concerned about and intrigued by. And I'd like to follow up on Director Deloria's comments that, you know, you stated, and it has been stated, that the gas tax is inequitable in a lot of ways, and that, you know, one charge per mile brings a fairness to the transportation system. However, I'm sure you recognize that one charge per mile for all passenger vehicles is a potentially tremendous inequity for rural residents, because it's often the rural regions where you know, they have the more affordable housing, and the further you get out in those rural regions, you often find the most disadvantaged communities, which means they will be paying much more for, you know, meeting their basic needs. And you stated that the purpose is to, I guess my question is, on this pilot program, is the purpose to determine the reliability of technology in rural regions, or is it understanding if the road tax works for rural residents?
Yes,
Yeah.
Both?
All of those things, yes, yes. And we recognize, obviously, we have such a housing issue here in California, and that is the result of so many different factors. I fully acknowledge that this potential program does not address all of those factors. I think what the potential positive for rural drivers is, though, is that right now you're driving that long distance under road charge. You're still going to drive that long distance. I can't change that distance factor,
Right.
but I can change potentially the per mile rate that
Okay.
you're driving. So the research we've done shows that on average right now, because rural drivers tend to drive less fuel efficient vehicles, they're
Right.
paying more per mile than their urban counterparts.
True.
So we have that potential to bring that per mile rate down a little bit into balance, across the region. So it's not going to solve all the problems by any means, but I think on the margin you will see some change. I'll give you an example. We have on our website a calculator. If you go to www.caroadcharge.com, you can put in your own vehicle, the number of miles you drive, and you can get an estimate of what you're paying under gas tax right now and what you might pay under a road charge. So you can see what the numbers are for yourself. And I did this with a rural resident up in the northern part of the state who drove a really old Chevy Silverado, and she drove tons and tons of miles, like twice the average Californian. And she found that she was paying $1,000 a year in state gas taxes, whereas the average Californian pays about $300. Shifting to a road charge, put that in half for her. She would save $500 a year. Now that's an extreme example. Most of the savings will be, more in the middle, but that's kind of what I get excited about, having grown up myself in a rural county. I love the potential for rural drivers to be saving a little bit. But again, it's gonna depend on the individual vehicle that a person drives. But that's what we're seeing on average, is that there's some potential for savings.
And well, this is the first time I've ever heard of a potential for different rates, perhaps for different regions. And so I appreciate that you're, thinking about all the aspects of how this works in our vast state and diverse state. So thank you, Lauren.
Yeah. And then this just made me think of another, there's so much going on here, quite honestly, when you start, picking at it. Because that has been a complaint, that for folks to try to buy more efficient cars, it's just too expensive. Cars are just off the charts. But then I'm going, okay, well, now the state, in theory, we're going to supposedly be all electric soon. So where is this really all going to go? I mean, where are we going to land on everything? This is just kind of, you can think it a lot. Because then I'm thinking that, I'm going to keep my gas cars as long as I can, seriously. So is this going to be a good thing then, ultimately, if we're all if there's only be electric cars, new one? I mean, where will this end up? Have you overthought this too?
Perhaps. I think, that's why Caltrans is rolling out this pilots to see if the road user charge would be a sustainable funding source for transportation investments. I mean, that's really what we're trying to solve with this issue. The gas tax is declining. It no longer has the purchasing power it once did. If a road user charge were to replace it, and that's what Caltrans is proposing, replace the gas tax. I don't know that that's ultimately what will happen, but I think if we have a stable fund source, which is based on vehicle miles traveled, it might right size that the funds that are available for the system.
Wow. Okay.
I don't think that I think as the fleet becomes a higher percentage electrified or zero emission, the road user charge would still be capturing revenue from those vehicles who don't use fuel. So
right.
It would help that ultimately backfill the loss in gas tax revenue.
Okay. And then I'm guessing that you're wanting us to spread this word in our newsletters and all that stuff, right? So are these meetings recorded and out somewhere that we can share a link to, if they want to see the presentation beyond, okay, so we'll have that.
And the link to the website is in the staff, the agenda, the staff report.
Yeah, but I'm talking about in this presentation with Lauren and everything, that we can find that and share it.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to say, it's, I mean, cost effective. Here's a good example, a Chevy Volt with 70,000 miles on it. The battery went out on it. The battery's cost was $26,553. The time all said was done, including labor, was 30 grand. I mean, so is it really cost effective? So there's a problem there, especially with these electric vehicles, because basically they're designed to basically throwaway cars is what they are. This is what we were always told, you know, these PEZ vehicles too. And so it's going to be a challenge. It really is, especially for these people. You know, I mean, they buy a vehicle and then when the warranty runs out and then you have to buy a battery and then the expense is just way too much compared to putting a new motor in the vehicle. So anyway, there's going to be a challenge in the future.
And I think
Eventually, yes. Eventually.
I think in 2030, let's see, 2034, whoever is sitting in the governor's seat will have a probably, I foresee in my crystal ball that there will be an extension of the CARB 2035 phase out of, you know, internal combustion engines, because whether or not in 11 years we're going to be anywhere near the infrastructure and the capacity that we need, not to mention a replacement for the gas tax that is dependable and thought out by then, it's probably not likely, but you know, we won't let politics get in the way of good policy. So I digress.
Yeah, I'll, Jackie.
Well, I have similar concerns. I mean, until you can keep my electricity on 365 days a year, you shouldn't be mandating I have an electric car, but that's really off topic from the topic here.
I think that it's critical that we develop a funding source for roads that is reliable, that meets the needs of folks. And the gas tax is a dead end eventually. So these are just the way it is. I'm not advocating for electric cars. I'm about ready to buy a really expensive truck, but that's my own personal self-inflicted wound. 100 years ago, automobiles were really unreliable. They were terrible things to drive. There was no standard in gasoline. There were gas stations on every corner. Driving was an adventure in 1922-3. And within a few decades, it became extraordinarily reliable with tons of standards, if not particularly safe. And my guess is that the evolution of this technology will have a similar arc. Or not. You know, there used to be Stanley steamers and they didn't last very long. And there were all sorts of alternatives to vehicles and they didn't last very long. I'm not going to try to predict the future because that's a fool's errand. But I do think that we do need to address this. It's an interesting thing. I happen to work in a part of California that makes El Dorado County look like Manhattan. So it is rural in every sense of the word. But yet there's a city there. And when you talk to people there, they have the same things. I drive long distances. I have all this time, block everything you hear here. But when you really talk to people, most of the people live in the city. When you actually talk to them about their driving habits, they don't drive that much actually, because they have all the services, grocery stores and Walmarts and stuff, and they can do that. And so I think that engine thing that they have on the website is intriguing because it really sort of brings it to light. I own this car. This is how many miles I drive. These are my alternatives. And what most people discover is lots of people discover they don't drive as much as they think they do. They really don't cover as many miles. Now, if you live way out in the South County or over on the Divide, you might drive more. In fact, you almost certainly would. It's kind of like if you live in Bieber in Lassen County, you do a lot more driving than if you live in Susanville. So anyway, just my 2 cents worth. I am fascinated, for all variety of reasons. I wish I could live longer to see how this thing all plays out. But it'll be fascinating over the next 10 or 20 years.
And talk about tailpipe emissions with cars, the new cars that they have on the road today. I've checked a lot of them. I'm not in the business anymore.
Right.
But I mean, the emission standards, way back when it's 14-1.
Oh yeah.
And now it's like 80-1.
Oh yeah.
So the emissions zero emissions pretty much come out the tailpipe. And mostly the reason why the catalytic converter, so it takes that and turns it into water vapor is what it does.
Right.
So, I mean, they're very, very efficient, a lot of the new cars,
Sure.
especially the new cars today. So.
And that brings up a whole nother issue of transportation planning. What happens when cars don't pollute anymore? And then we're all going to be back in a real different strange.
That's a discussion for another day.
That is a totally different discussion. Okay. Now,
taking public comment on item number 9. Public comment will be taken first from those participating in the boardroom and then from those participating through Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to comment. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise your hand button. Please voluntarily state your name for the record.
Now.
Yeah.
Come on up.
come on down.
I didn't have the agenda in front of me. I knew we were going to talk about this, but my name is Heather Brownlee. I live in Garden Valley. Thank you for listening to me. I wanted to thank you, Mr. Turnbow, for bringing up the plaque for the sign for EDCTC. And thank you for the plaque idea. I will never own an electric vehicle, ever. I'm driving a high performance Camaro 2002. Passes emissions all the time. Smog. 22-year-old car, 21-year-old car. My truck is a Chevy, weighs 26,000 pounds and it's 2003. It's always passed. I personally, what I feel about the gas tax is it was a bait and switch, in my opinion. Yes meant no, no meant yes. And people didn't realize that. I did, but many people think, oh, yes, we're gonna be against this or we're gonna be for this. And that's not what the case was. I think the gas tax should be eliminated. And as far as the roads being charged for vehicles driving on the roads, wherever they are, we're already paying for those roads. We're paying taxes on those roads. And I don't feel that it makes any difference what weight vehicle that you are driving in order to eliminate that fee. That fee should not be there. Am I making sense to you guys? I'm not used to public speaking, but I just feel that, for instance, my daughter-in-law has an electric vehicle. Battery went dead. Vehicle cost her $25,000. The battery's $10,000. Their income is about $50,000 a year. How can they afford this? The only thing they can afford is to go out and buy another vehicle and pay payments. I don't want my kids doing that. And how do we put these electric vehicles out when they catch on fire? Are we going to have fire trucks that are full of flour? Spray flour on them because water doesn't work. It takes hours. I've seen it, hours and hours and hours to put an electric vehicle out. I don't know how often they catch on fire, but when they do, it's horrific. So that's my opinion. I believe the gas tax should be eliminated, and I'm going to push for that. And I don't believe that we should be charged at all for using the roads. We already are. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak?
Seeing no public comment or no further public comment from the boardroom, now taking public comment from Zoom participants. Now taking public comment from Hannah Cohn.
Hi, Hannah Cohn here. For one, just really appreciate the presentation and the board bringing this on the agenda. And this question is particularly for Lauren. So how will this road charge impact construction costs, specifically for projects being done in those rural and tribal areas, as well as how traveling is related to construction? And of course, in relation to this road charge, specifically for the construction sector. How will this impact that?
Great question. So the construction sector is one of those unique impact areas, I think, and they can play out differently in different parts of the state too. But with construction, you pretty much have to drive to the job site, whether you're urban or rural, because even if you have, a lot of transit options in the region, they're not going to be really accessible to all the different sites you have to go to, nor can you take your tools on a bus. It doesn't work too well. So there's that aspect, and they can have to drive a long way because their work location shifts a lot. So again, it's going to come down to the vehicle that individual drives, and they're probably driving a larger vehicle because again, they have to carry those tools and things like that. So if you're driving a less fuel efficient vehicle, there is that potential to, again, because we're like this right now, some people are paying a lot and some are not paying much or even anything. If you have an EV, we're gonna have to bring that into alignment. So some people will pay less and some people will pay more. So the people who are going to pay more will be those very fuel efficient vehicle owners, such as Tesla. The people who pay less will be those who own less fuel efficient vehicles, such as trucks. So there's potential for that individual in the construction industry to potentially save money. It's not going to, again, change the number of miles they have to drive because of the industry they're in, but around the margin, it may end up being less. How that might impact construction costs of projects. So that's going to be an interesting connection, which I don't necessarily know off the top of my head, but if they are getting reimbursed or anything like that, that cost would potentially go down and things like that. We are going to be doing a research project this year on the impact to super commuters, those who have to drive a lot. Because that's a very important group in our state, and I think sometimes construction can fall into that. So we're going to get into the unique impacts there, because again, we want to understand how this system may impact different folks in different ways of life.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lauren, for that insight. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
There's no further public comment.
Thank you. Okay, well, this is an information item. I strongly urge everybody to go use the tools that are out there and let folks know. It's a pilot program. They're going to offer you $250. I'm going to probably sign up for
Kind
it
of intrigued by that.
because anyway, thank you very much. That was great. All right, next.
Thank you.
The Freeway Service Patrol 2022 report. Ms. Kiefer.
Thank you, Chair Clarici, Commissioners. This item is presented to you today to provide an update on the Freeway Service Patrol, or FSP, which EDCTC operates in partnership with Extreme Towing. FSP was initiated in 2010. The service operates Monday through Friday during peak AM and PM commute hours, or as needed or requested by CHP. FSP service is funded through the Caltrans FSP program and the Sacramento Area Council of Governments Service Authority for Freeways and Expressways as a congestion relief program. No other federal, state, or local funds are needed for this service. EDCTC oversees the contract management with Extreme Towing, while CHP oversees and manages the daily operations of FSP services and reports back to EDCTC with any necessary updates. The FSP operators collect data on the location, time, and type of motorist aid service they provide. In 2022, FSP logged a total of 713 assists with 0.52 assists per hour, with the number one issue being mechanical, followed by flat tires. Additionally, motorists are asked to complete a survey rating the service they received. All survey responses received for 2022 rate the FSP as excellent and express their gratitude for this service. Some examples are included in the staff report. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, can I say something?
You
on
by
this?
all means. Go right
Extreme Towing is what a great organization. They really are. And they've been very, very helpful. A lot of the motorists that are stranded along the freeway. And Woody and I have talked about it before. In fact, I was going to a meeting in El Dorado Hills and I had to be there at a certain time and I got a flat tire. So it was crazy. So I ended up calling, I got my AAA card, and they happened and AAA was 2 hours out before they could get to me. I got the flat tire, it was more than like 5 minutes and they showed up. Can we help you? And they changed the tire for me. So that's an awesome what Extreme Towing does, especially for the people get them back on the road. So I just want to thank you for contracting with them, Woody. I think it's a great thing and they're a great organization. They really are.
That's a
Agreed.
great testimonial.
It is. Trust me, I made it in my meeting too, so it
That's
was perfect.
fantastic.
I have a question. Do these people, I should know the answer to this, but do they just like cruise the highway?
That's
and-
what they
Okay.
do. Exactly
Great.
what they
All
do.
right.
Yeah.
That's great. Are there any other questions or comments?
No, I have a very similar story.
Oh.
My wife was actually going down the hill and
Uh-huh.
got a flat tire. Same thing. It was going to be like an hour and a half or something, 90
Yeah.
minutes, I think, for AAA. And they saw her on the road. They came over, fixed the tire, and
Exactly.
she was on her way again.
Not
So-
every counties have this service.
Right.
Yeah, so it's, once again, where El Dorado County is,
Yeah.
it shines.
It's funny, way back when, and I think you remember this, John, but anyway, you remember the Hangtown Car Club?
Yes.
That's what they used to do. They
Mhm.
used to drive up and down the freeway and help residents who were
Yeah,
stranded.
that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a long time ago. Trust me.
And no local, no,
I was gonna say, you're
No
pulling
local
some.
funds.
deep
Yeah, I'm
history.
pulling some age there. a little
Pulling some
bit,
deep
yeah,
history on
exactly.
that one.
and I'll just add, no local funds are needed for this service. It's
Right.
funded through the SACOG Service Authority for Freeways and Expressways and Caltrans Freeway Service Patrol, which is funded through the $1 vehicle registration fee that we all pay. And up until we initiated this Freeway Service Patrol service, we were a donor county. So
Right.
we were contributing that to the Sacramento region.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
No, I remember getting those reports and I'm like, this was like years ago. And I'm like, hey, we've got money here. Use it for us. Okay, anyway,
Now taking public comment on item number 10. Public comment will be taken first from those participating in the boardroom and then from those participating through Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to comment. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise your hand button and please voluntarily state your name for the record.
okay. Well, thank you very much. All right, item 11 is the draft State Route 49 American River Confluence Study. Mr. Deloria.
Thank you, Chair Clarici, Commissioners. We have Jim Damquich from DKS who is attending virtually. He's going to give us a presentation, but before he does, I'd like to just introduce this item. This draft State Route 49 American River Confluence Study was initiated a couple of years ago by the request from the residents who reached out to Commissioner Parlin to address some of the safety issues along the State Route 49 corridor from the community of Cool to Auburn, primarily at the confluence, the recreation area there. Also looking at issues with oversized trucks getting stuck in that corridor with the hairpin turns and the topography. It is a safety issue. And then also with the shutdown with the coronavirus, the visitation went through the roof at the confluence. And if you recall that the parking used to be kind of pull in straight on parking instead of parallel parking. And you'd have all sorts of folks kind of coming out into the travel lanes from their vehicles. We actually were able to work with Caltrans to get that parallel parking done even before the study was complete. So that was one improvement that was made. But let me just tell you what the study is and what the study is not. The study was intended to look at the safety and operation of the corridor, including that truck traffic, parking, and bike and pedestrian safety. Also looking at some transit shuttle options to bring transit shuttles from either Auburn or Cool down to the confluence and back. The city of Auburn actually deployed a pilot shuttle 2 years ago to look at that. The study was not an evacuation plan. And the reason I say that is we went through an extensive public engagement process. Initially, it was virtual during the lockdown, and then we had public outreach meetings in person at the Cool Community Church. The last meeting of the public engagement campaign was last October at the Cool Community Church, directly after the mosquito fire. And I will say the participants at that public workshop were solely focused on evacuation planning. And we understand that as someone who experienced evacuation from the Caldor fire, I certainly understand that personally. But this study was not intended to be an evacuation plan, but to address some of the safety and operations issues of the corridor, which will have a secondary benefit of improving the conditions in the event of evacuation. So that's what the study is and what the study is not. We worked with Jim Damkowicz, who's on now from DKS and Associates, who put together this draft study, and he's going to give a presentation, about a 15-minute presentation on the draft report. We will be bringing back the final report to your commission for approval in March. One last note: we did meet just last week or this week with
What's today?
Thursday.
It was Monday.
Yeah, it was Monday.
It was this week.
Commissioner Parla and I met with a couple of constituents who had some additional concerns about the study. And we are going to include 2 of the recommendations that they asked for. One of which is looking at a transit shuttle option that would go along the Old Forest Hill Road route that was outside of the geography of our study area, but we will include that language and that recommendation in the study. And the second was to expand the towaway zone, the no parking zone on the, bear with me here, on the south side of the bridge on State Route 49 on the west, on the western travel lane. So the southbound lane, there's currently a no tow zone just south of the bridge. They would like to expand that to accommodate more emergency vehicle access. That bridge is used for staging when there's a water rescue or other types of emergency services events that occur there. So those 2 items will be included. Joanne Thornton is here today. She's the one that requested those 2 items to be included. So we will be adding those as well. All right, Jim, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, again, Jim Damkowicz with DKS and Associates. We're the only team, but let me bring up the PowerPoint presentation, and I think Woody's going to address the first few slides. So I'll share my screen. First off, can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So let me know if you can see the screen.
We can, Jim.
Okay. Oops. And Woody, did you want to take on the first few slides?
Sure. So the presentation today is just going to go over the overall overview of the study itself, what the project goals were, the deliverables, our outreach results, and that was an extensive outreach campaign that was, again, both virtual and in person, the corridor assessments, and then the recommended improvements that came about from all that effort. This was an effort that, yeah, go ahead, next slide, Jim. Jim, can you hear? There we go. This was a coordinated effort. The State Route 49 is owned and operated by Caltrans. It bypasses through the state park, it bypasses through the county, it connects the community of Cool and the city of Auburn and Placer County. So we had quite a few partners in this effort, including Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, Caltrans, State Parks, El Dorado County, Caltrans, I think I mentioned them already. Project goals. Again, as I mentioned before, improve safety and access along the corridor. And that's for all users of the corridor, including trucks, passenger vehicles, and bicycles and pedestrians. Looking at establishing the feasibility of a transit shuttle from Cool to the Confluence and from the city of Auburn to the Confluence. Looking at examining the impacts and potential for removing the oversized trucks, and then examining opportunities for emergency evacuation improvements. And again, those come from as secondary benefits of the operational improvements that are proposed.
So I'll take it from here. So as Woody mentioned, the study area is State Route 49 from City of Auburn all the way through the Confluence and down to the town of Cool. And for analysis purposes, we broke this corridor up into 4 segments. Segment 1 being from Auburn to the county line. Segment 2, which is there to the bridge. Segment 3 is the Confluence area. That's the primary area of interest. And then just east of the quarry, segment 4 starts there and goes down to the juncture with State Route 193. Oops, it's got a hair trigger. So in terms of the studies that were performed, this was a multidisciplinary corridor study. We did a parking capacity assessment, looking at not only the established parking facilities, but the de facto parking areas that folks use despite not being signed for parking. So we did a full capacity assessment out in the field. We also performed what is called a roadway safety audit. This is a very detailed process for evaluating safety issues within a corridor. And that's what this photo is here. And this safety audit included members of Placer County TPA, El Dorado CTC, El Dorado County, City of Auburn, Caltrans, and the consultant staff, as well as Park Service. So it was a great group. And they looked at safety issues that are out there right now that you can see, but also keeping in mind that if a shuttle service were to be implemented, what additional safety precautions or treatments would be necessary that a service such as that would operate safely. We also looked at origins and destination data this is cell data from SACOG, just to get a feel for who's using the corridor, what the socioeconomic characteristics of the travelers who use the corridor, and so on and so forth. This information wasn't really used to inform the recommendations, but just to give us a good idea who's using State Route 49 through the Confluence on a daily basis. As Woody mentioned, we did a traffic assessment to address, and I've done and managed quite a few truck studies. This one's was very interesting because it's just one roadway, one corridor, and trucks. The larger trucks technically should not be using the State Route 49. So it's really about, where are they coming from and why? And I'll get into that a little later. And then last but not least, we did a transit shuttle feasibility assessment. What would it cost to have a shuttle service, either a seasonal or a all year round? And then in terms of the funding ability to, obviously operations, and then the ability to fund the operations of such a shuttle service, does it pencil out or not? I do want to point out that this is a very interesting corridor. I think on average conditions on daily, even during the traditional AM and PM peak hour traffic conditions, it's really not that bad. This is annual average conditions and it's pretty smooth, but in reality, this is what motorists experience on any given time with these really big peaks in additional travel time as a result of an incident, as a result of a 48 to 53 foot kingpin to rear axle truck being on 49 when it's not supposed to be, and basically, blocking traffic, as well as, water evacuation and things of that nature. And I will say that during the course of our study, there were several of these incidences. And that's really the issue with 49. It's more of a reliability issue. And so I'm sympathetic as well to the folks who are very concerned about evacuation. When you talk about evacuation events, reliability is key. And right now, State Route 49 really suffers from a reliability issue just based on how constrained it is physically. And then with the traffic that occurs and the incidents that occur on it, it can have really big effects. So moving on. So, and Woody mentioned about the outreach, and we did have a very comprehensive outreach effort. I'm going to focus on primarily what we heard from our community survey. And then we also implemented what is called an interactive mapping tool called Social Pinpoint, which allows folks to provide input in a geospatial way from the comfort of their own home. So go through the results of that. I do want to point out we did do workshops, as again, Woody mentioned, some of the study did occur during the shelter in place restrictions. So we had 2 virtual stakeholder meetings and 1 virtual workshop. The good news is that those restrictions were relaxed and we were able to hold 2 in-person workshops, both in the town of Poole. All were well attended. So real quick, Social Pinpoint, it's got a Google Earth or Google Map, I should say, interface that everybody's very familiar with. You can take a pen and drop it at a specific location and you can zoom in as close as you want. So you can get a very detailed geospatial reference. And then a pop-up box comes up and folks can provide comments. This was a very useful tool and it provided a lot of good input. As you can see, we had over 1,700 visits to that Social Pinpoint site, 738 unique users, and 130 comments. And all these comments are provided in the draft report. And you can see that, based on the quarter segmentation, this is segment 1, which is yellow. About 24% of the comments were on segment 1. Segment 2 had the least amount of issues or concerns. Obviously, segment 3, which is the Confluence, got the lion's share, but also segment 4 down to Cool got a lot of good input as well. So the good news, it wasn't totally focused on the Confluence. Folks provided input on every segment of our study corridor. And so to try to summarize what we heard from folks using the interactive web-based tool, you can see that a large percentage of it was related to parking. A large percentage of it was related to safety as it results or related to parking. You have congestion and geometry or geometric roadway deficiencies. All these are fairly in traffic control. These deal with the roadway system itself, which, as Woody said, was the primary goal when we first started out. Trucks and that signage and trucks kind of go together. So that's roughly 10%. 7% was based on evacuation concerns, although evacuation kind of permeated through all these comments. I will point out this bypass bridge had a few comments, and that's, I think, a legacy concept. That is a quantum infrastructure improvement that is well beyond the scope of our study, but all that input is provided for folks who are interested. We also had a community survey, and we had 195 folks respond to the survey. So combined with the Social Pinpoint, 130 comments, that's over 325 unique comments that provided good information to help inform the study. Just a few things of interest. The reasons locals avoid recreating in the Confluence, the primary reasons were lack of parking, difficulty parking, seasonal overcrowding, and then just safety concerns as it relates to those things. So parking is a key issue in the Confluence. And so what does that look like? Here are some great pictures that folks were kind enough to send to us that we're using, that we're driving through the Confluence. And you can see the issue with parking, folks crossing 49 because there's no designated pedestrian crossings along 49, along the bridge, which is very narrow for folks to walk that are coming from Old Forest Hill Road. You can see that this is not exactly the safest condition either. So those are good examples of what folks were concerned about. And then in terms of just overall safety concerns, the big hitters were the presence of large trucks, parking motorists, and then, pretty much everything. You can see it's pretty evenly distributed in terms of the concerns. Speed is a concern through the confluence. And so, yeah, sight distance is a concern. So everything is pretty, not one thing stands out in particular. They're all a concern to the community. So another thing we asked that I found was interesting was improvement types that were most supported. And the number one was prohibiting trucks. So trucks became a really big predominant issue in the study. And then all of a sudden protected crosswalks. So trucks are an issue, and the lack of crosswalks, which would be supported by the public. Other things are supported as well, but those are the ones that stand out. And then last but not least, we asked folks, would they support using parking fees, so additional parking fees, to formalize the spaces that are currently not formalized parking spaces if we use those funds to fund the shuttle. Roughly 65% folks were in favor of that, and the rest were not. So let's talk a little bit about the shuttle service. We did an operational assessment, and we assumed that half the revenue, the new revenue that was generated from parking, could be provided to the shuttle operations and pay for those. So these, and we quickly found out that a service from Auburn to Placerville was not, would not pencil out. It would be too expensive. So really the main service we focus on was Auburn to Poole. And so a part-time or a seasonal, the summer season, every day could be funded, and that could be half-hour headways to hour headways. And then another service would be year-round, but just on weekends, both 1 hour and half-hour headways. So those four types of services can be implemented. And even if revenue is not used from parking, there are other sources of funding. And the main issue there is that, you know, there's other competing needs for additional revenues as generated by parking fees, mainly the Park Service. They rely heavily on the fees that they currently collect from those spaces that are paid parking. If that capacity were to increase and add more paid parking, their needs, you know, go beyond what they're currently funded for. So the reality is that the Park Service would be very desirous of internalizing those funds for their own planning purposes. That's not a bad thing because there's alternative funding sources that can help fund operating funds of a shuttle service. There's federal CMAQ funds, which already there are a number of CMAQ projects that have been funded within El Dorado County. There's TDA funding and various other funding sources that are specific to transit. And of course, there's shuttle fares that can help defray the cost of operations. So moving on to the truck assessment, and really the issue here are what I call, you know, they're the 48 to 53 foot from kingpin to rear axle. These are the very large trucks. This is a good example. This is obviously a 53 footer. I can spot these very easily. This is also a 53 footer. And what happens, it's called off tracking. Vehicles of this dimension require larger turn radiuses. And those radiuses are geometrically not present in many locations within the 49 corridor between Poole and the city of Auburn. And so these are actual pictures that, again, thank you for the folks who sent these to us. These all occurred during the course of our study. You can see that, you know, the front axle is in one lane and the back is encroaching on the other lane. You're pinching this vehicle right here. It's not good. This vehicle is completely blocking the roadway. So these folks have to sit and wait until this trucker can hopefully negotiate that turn. And here's another example where a car is getting squeezed off to the side. Not a good situation. So I can tell you right now, these three pictures are of vehicles that legally should not be on State Route 49. And we'll go into why they are. This is a Dollar General truck, and this is a locally generated truck. And technically, this truck shouldn't be there either. And I'll get into some of our recommendations on how to address trucking that comes out of and into the Dollar General store in Poole. So why are the trucks that aren't supposed to be on 49 there is because the national network or roadways that are designed to accommodate those size trucks, namely US 50 and I-80. This is the problem. If a trucker needs to come down and eventually head north on 80, that's a 73.5 mile trip. Just to make that exchange there, it takes 82 minutes, assuming decent traffic conditions. But here's 49, and it's a very attractive shortcut. And if they can cut across here, they can complete this trek in 47 minutes and only travel 26.7 miles. The issue is too that truckers who come from all states of the United States are not necessarily local if they're moving or driving an STAA size truck. They're listening to navigation. They're listening to Siri. There's a STAR system as well. Those systems do not recognize or adhere to the STAA network. So drivers will be led to use the 49, which is a big issue. So that's the motivation to use 49. And then real quick, how big of an issue are we talking about? So this is Caltrans volume data. This is at Cool at the juncture of 49 and 193. And this is at Auburn. So really it's these two rows that we should focus on. Total daily traffic is around over 8,000 vehicles. Of that daily traffic, about 7 or 8% are trucks, about 640 and 690 trucks. But those are all kinds of trucks, different sizes of trucks. Many are totally legal to be using 49 and can navigate it safely. But of those 7 or 8%, about 31 to 19% are 5 axles or larger. These are the trucks that can be those STA size vehicles. So we're looking at 200, roughly 150 trucks that have 5 axles. I believe most of the 5 axle trucks are 48 to 53 foot from kingpin to rear axle, and they probably shouldn't be using 49. We did use, again, another source of cell data, which is streetlight data, to actually track vehicles that are doing that US 50 to I-80. And based on that cell data, we found that roughly 75 truck trips each day pass through 49 that is using it as that shortcut from US 50 to 80 or 80 to 50. So about half of these guys are cut through traffic that are using 49. So in terms of how do we address that, you should keep in mind that the county or the city of Auburn or El Dorado CTC or Placer County TPA have no enforcement responsibility or capability to cite STA size trucks on State Route 49. That is the responsibility of the California Highway Patrol, and they are the only ones who can enforce that. Things that you can do are wayfinding and better signage. And so that means that much better signage is needed at Placerville when trucks do that interchange from 50 onto 49. And then much better signage is required in the city of Auburn. Now, there are U-turns that hopefully within the 49, we can get them to change their mind and do a U-turn and head back. And so I'll be talking about some of those improvements as well. So overall, I know this is kind of wordy, but given that we have no enforcement capability, better signage is key. And I already mentioned Placerville in Auburn and in the town of Poole. We can provide better signage to dissuade truck drivers who are driving those oversized vehicles to not drive through the confluence. We can provide turnaround opportunities for oversized trucks, namely roundabouts. And there's already a roundabout it's moving forward at Lincoln and State Route 49 within the city of Auburn. And then I know Caltrans has studied this in the past, And we also recommended at least doing a intersection control evaluation at the intersection of 49 and 193 in Pool. The idea there is that vehicles will see the signage and will be provided an opportunity at that roundabout to turn around and go back. Will they do that? Don't know, but that's the idea. Again, I mentioned the STAR and truck navigation systems, stronger language to try to get those systems to restrict vehicles that are over 38 feet kingpin to rear axle from using 49. Anything at 38 feet and under is fine, but not over. Improve the coordination and communication channels with highway advisory radio. And then also encourage local and regional agencies to coordinate with the CHP for greater enforcement. And I will say, we reached out several times to the CHP to get their input on this, and we didn't have much luck. But that doesn't mean that this recommendation should not be pursued and continue to be pursued. Regarding the Dollar General store, so as a condition of the approval of that store, El Dorado County conditioned it to preclude oversized trucks from driving into Confluence. Obviously, that needs to be revisited. There is, under CEQA, there is mitigation monitoring. I think this is an example of that, there's such a preponderance of 48 to 53 foot trucks that they're more cost effective. They can haul more. So the cost per unit hauling is cheaper. So there's a lot of economic reasons why those trucks are at play, but they shouldn't be using the Confluence. And then last but not least, encourage local and regional agencies such as yourselves, El Dorado CTC, Placer County, TPA, Caltrans, and the CHP to form a goods movement committee. There are several counties that have these, and I've worked with them in the past. They're very effective, and they can establish at least a forum for addressing oversized truck usage, not only in the Confluence, but other areas that have these similar issues in El Dorado County. So in terms of capital improvements, we identified over 50 improvements, and I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll just give you some visual examples, but the projects kind of fall into three categories: improvements that are addressing safety issues or needs right now at the quarter, the state it's in, and regardless of whether a shuttle service is implemented or not. And that deals with the general operations and safety, heavy duty truck considerations, and then evacuation concerns. There's another set of improvements that are specifically made to make sure if a shuttle service is implemented in the corridor that it's not creating new safety issues. And these are good beacon pedestrian crossings. There'll be shuttle stops. We want to make sure that folks can cross 49 safely to get to the recreation outlets that they're desiring to visit. And so that's another set of improvements. And then last but not least, additional improvement trees, assuming implementation of that service. So real quick, I'll just run through, and I do want to point out, and Woody mentioned this, that post-draft, we did receive comments from Caltrans. It is their facility. Some of the comments or themes was they would like to see more turnout lanes. That's more to accommodate, I think, trucks, but we can look at that. There was a concern that edge line rumble strips, bicyclists don't like those, and that's well recognized. And I will say our focus was on pedestrians and not so much on bikes within this study corridor. Site distance check should be performed at all proposed shuttle stops, which totally agree with, and that'll happen as those improvements are implemented or pursued. And then the other comments were strictly or mainly editorial. And then again, the public input for two additional considerations was to see a emergency vehicle refuge area just south of the bridge on the west side of 49. And then recommend the city of Auburn, because they already have a shuttle service, it's in their jurisdiction, so it makes a lot of sense to see if they can extend their shuttle service to serve Old Forest Hill Road and create that loop. So those are all good comments. And as Woody said, they'll be reflected in the final. So here's our corridor. Again, at this end is mainly park and ride lots for the shuttle. Same with Cool. There's ample opportunities or possibilities for a park and ride lot for folks to park their cars, leave them there, and get on a shuttle to go recreate into Confluence. Or reducing the number of vehicles into Confluence. So at Roby Point, this is where we see that we can formalize parking for such a shuttle service in addition to Auburn. These are basically pullouts along segment 2. And then obviously in the Confluence itself, which I'll get into, there's the bridge, there's a need for shuttle stops, and then pedestrian facilities to make things much safer for pedestrians as they try to get to the recreation outlets that they desire. So I'll just be real quick and just run through some of these. So this is the 49 Lincoln Roundabout. This is an active project. Our recommendation is simply, let's really make sure we sign it and make sure that trucks who are planning on using 49 and going through the Confluence understand that their size vehicles are restricted, and that will provide a roundabout to allow them to turn around. In Cool, this is 93, 49 and 93. This is just a concept, but again, same idea applies here. Now trucks have already entered, they've already gone a long way. So getting them to turn around is, that's at least a shot, but at least we got to provide that opportunity. It also provides a nice visual gateway into the study corridor. It improves pedestrian and bicycle safety within this area of Cool. So there's some good things to go with that if it's desired. Now the shuttle stops, we're going to have also recommending ITS, which is basically traveler information, variable message signs that will allow travelers to know what parking is available, if parking is full, so they can make a quick decision to use the shuttle. The idea, again, is to remove vehicle demand from the Confluence area and use existing lots and paved areas as applicable. So here is, this is in Cool. So this is just one area where we think a potential park and ride lot could go. There are other locations, but this is just one. Here on the other side, this is segment 1, so Roby Point. And so again, real-time signage to advertise the shuttle and the parking conditions. And you can see here, we'll formalize parking. There'll be a slight realignment of 49 to improve sight distance and safety, and to allow bi-directional shuttle service to occur here at a stop. Here's east of Roby Point, another potential shuttle stop. And these are the same location. They're just two slightly different designs. One has a single pad shuttle pickup, one has two. You can see there's a channelization improvement to allow left turns in, because there's no available right of way on the other side to provide a shuttle stop. So this needs to have a little channelization to allow vehicles heading the opposite direction from the Confluence to come in and drop off passengers and carry forward. So this is west of Point 52 Trailhead. Again, this has adequate space for a bi-directional shuttle stop on either side of the road and can formalize parking as well. So this is another really nice location where folks can park their car, hop on a shuttle, and make it to the Confluence. So in terms of the Confluence itself, these are primarily focused on pedestrian improvements. So this is I went too far, but here's the bridge. So the idea here is, and you saw the photos, there's a lot of folks that are coming down Old Forest Hill Road, and they're just, they're walking across the bridge. There's not a very, the clear path is maybe a few feet. It's not a good environment for pedestrians. As you can see, there's children, there's folks with their kids. So basically we're recommending narrowing the lanes from 12 feet to 11. that is a possibility that Caltrans would consider that. And then shifting the lanes to the south to allow the north end to have a much more appropriate space and clearance for a pedestrian path. So that would require just restriping the lanes to allow that to happen. As we cross the bridge, this will be a shuttle stop. These will be beaconed pedestrian crossings. These are the flashing yellow. Well, let me go back there. We also recommend a crossing, the same beacon crossing up here, because folks, they're on both sides of Old Forest Hill Road. They come down on both sides. So a crossing is necessary there for safety and for visual of the pedestrians who are trying to cross. We're also recommending a Class 1 trail on both sides of 49, starting at the Calcutta Falls Trailhead. And that's going to continue, and that's this whole area right here, and that's going to continue to the quarry connection. Keep in mind, this was a question that Caltrans had on the south side. This will be on the other side of the parked cars. So actually the cars that are parked provide a natural physical buffer to provide a safer environment for the pedestrians who are using that path. And so that is not going to compromise any of the existing parking that are there now. Those two on either side of the Class 1 trails will then end at the Quarry Road Trailhead crossing. This will be an ADA compliant ramp. And as you know, or probably don't know, that there's an ADA trail that is on the other side of this parking lot. So it's a nice feature to include that. Now, in terms of fire evacuation, all the things that I just mentioned, as what he said, will facilitate evacuation needs during an event. So the shuttle service provides added capacity to move folks out. The traveler information, the variable message signs would be key. Reduction of truck traffic hopefully makes 49 more reliable and doesn't get trucks involved in an evacuation event should it happen. But we also highly recommend installation of cell towers. And you've all seen these. They can look kind of realistic, but at least they're in the context of the rural area of the Confluence. But what is key here is that there's a lot of dead zones in the Confluence. So better cell coverage for getting the word out of an evacuation, we feel is a good thing and a good improvement to do. And then again, in segment 3, there's these hairpin turns. We've identified a number of them and suggested ways to do what we can within the given right of way to make these turns a bit softer. I'm not saying that they'll accommodate an STAA size truck. They probably won't. So this is not an improvement to accommodate that activity, but it should help other vehicles, and we're recommending rumble strips to help maintain adherence to the lanes and the shoulders. So that was a whirlwind, and that was just a subset of the improvements. But I'll end here and open up for questions. But ultimately, our recommendation today is just to present the plan, receive input from the commission and the public, and that will inform our next step, which is to finalize the draft and come back to this board in March for approval.
And if Jim, I just want to add one final comment before we turn it over to questions. Any of the proposed recommendations or projects that are included in this study would go through an environmental review process, including alternatives analysis. So the high level concepts that were presented today would be analyzed in depth, which would include the public engagement again and all that. So I just want to make sure that you're all aware of that moving forward. That was a comment that we heard from the public. They were concerned this was kind of a done deal. None of these have funding, and none of these have design or environmental clearance, and all that would have to happen.
Can I go ahead? So Woody, with that, what you just said, can I get that phrasing, what you just said, so it's in the study, so I can point to it for people when they go, Lori, what were you thinking? Because I'm gonna back it up. I met Joanne. Joanne's here. She's one of our residents that's been very engaged. And she called me in, I think, December of 2018, right after I knew I was gonna take office, but I hadn't been sworn in yet. This area, the Confluence, is so crazy because of, and I appreciate Woody saw I was pulling my hair out because the complexities here. The river itself is a boundary between two counties. Okay, right there, bam. Land of the state parks is that whole area out there, because it was supposed to be Auburn Dam, is owned by the Bureau of Reclamation. Okay, there's feds. Then you've got state parks is running programs on top. Okay, there's one state program. Then you've got Highway 49, Caltrans running through there. But then Placer County has Forest Hill running here. It is such a complex area to try to do anything. And Joanne and I worked with a lot of residents when the state parks was updating their general plan. That was a whole other issue, but related to this area. And then that wrapped up, and I was heavily engaged in that. And then when COVID hit, the governor said, go out and recreate. And it felt like everyone went here to the Confluence. And I drove through there to try to figure out what we could potentially do. It was scary. I cannot tell you how scary. These photos are good, but there was people would have their babies in the highway, and my husband's cringing and we're driving. It was horrible. I just don't understand. And so I'm like, what can we do? And he's like, well, to do anything, you really need to have some information and a study. Then you can go out and get money for projects. So that's how this all started. I appreciate somehow, I can't remember the middle, how this happened when Caltrans actually did do that. They called it a maintenance project and they changed it to parallel parking. That was a huge improvement. And I will tell you guys, there's a Facebook post where the community actually said that that was a good thing. That was a good fix. I've never seen that ever. So that one little improvement made a huge difference, but it's still out there. And then the trucks, can't even say enough about the trucks. I mean, so I just want to thank you, Woody, for stepping in and giving us a path to all of this. And I think if we have that phrasing in here, that clarity, that the only one that we will be pursuing, I believe, without further community input is the changing in the signs and the federal highway designation. We are going to do that as soon as this is adopted, is my understanding. We don't need further input on that. But everything else will have, it's a CIP, capital improvement project, and there will be further studies and the community input. So I just need that as clear as anything, and then we're ready to rock and roll. And thank you. And thank you, Joanne, for helping publish. She helped. I gave her old campaign signs and she repainted them to get people to go to our meetings. And Joanne was very disappointed in the turnout. I thought it was great. We had so many people there for this topic. So just, I want to thank you for all of that. So I hope you guys read every 126 pages of it. It's
very interesting.
It really is. There's a lot going on there, huh?
Yeah, there is. And especially the large trucks is really concerning, especially these people walking around and those kind of trucks coming down the hill, possibly losing their brakes.
It's just terrifying.
It could be a very, very dangerous situation. So anyway.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I would just say that's a place.
I got one.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
So then we got to work on Highway 49 south towards Amador County, because the S-turns there is not, there's a lot of trucks that get stuck in those S-turns, very much so, especially when traffic is starting to come up the hill, the trucks are coming down the hill and they have to back up. It's very, very dangerous to make these trucks to make those corners through the S-turns.
Do you have anything to say about this study though?
Well, yeah, but it's very good, but that's another thing to work
So
on.
you're asking for another study, is what
Yeah,
you're asking.
exactly.
Okay.
Caltrans is already actually looking at that part of the corridor. I know Commissioner Thomas and Commissioner Turnbull brought that up last year.
Awesome.
And they're
Good.
looking at that.
There's no time like the present.
Right.
Yeah, I would just say
yeah, go
that
ahead.
this is, a place that my friends and I used to go all the time, once upon a time. Then it was just not on the weekends. We simply don't go here anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
you
it's
just-
that bad.
It's a mess. Yeah.
It's a beautiful area.
It is.
Yes, I'd like, Woody and I talked about this the other day, and I drive shuttles for my daughter's rafting company, and I drive through here a lot. And people are idiots. I mean, they just like walk everywhere. It's sort of like, I liken it to Main Street in Placerville, where people think it's like Disneyland. And so they'll walk in Mill Street to take a picture of something, and they don't understand that this is a working road. And the same thing with 49, and even Forest Hill Road going up, the old Forest Hill Road going up towards Forest Hill. These are all working roads, and folks just get crazy down there. The parallel parking was a huge improvement. That was a significant improvement for safety. Do they charge? I mean, one way to get people to take a shuttle is you start charging people to park all through that region, and they
So
don't, right?
current- yeah,
And they
cur-
can't, I don't
Well,
think.
currently Caltrans policy is that, and Jenna could correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
but they would not charge for parking in the state right of way. However, there are cases where that has been done along the Highway 1 corridor along
Right.
the coast. So I think there is a case study there to look
Yeah,
at.
yeah, because the shuttles will be a challenge because, I mean, people will do crazy things to park for free. They'll put themselves in danger to park for free. And so if you were to somehow tweak that over, then you would all of a sudden get people taking shuttles and doing other things. Are there any other comments or questions up here? It's a very well done, Jim, by the
very
way.
good.
Very well done. A
Yeah,
lot of
I
good
will say
information.
he managed to get in 5G cell towers, roundabouts, and Dollar General. all into the same-
I do have a
Actually,
question.
Great.
Is the Lincoln Road in Auburn, is that roundabout a thing?
Yes.
Okay, so that one is going to get done.
That makes
Okay.
sense.
I think they broke ground on it late last year or mid
That makes
last year.
sense there.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. I didn't know that. Okay. All right. No more questions or comments up here.
Now taking public comment on item number 11. Public comment will be taken first from those participating in the boardroom and then from those participating through Zoom. For those participating by Zoom, please make sure you unmute yourself when called upon. If you're joining the meeting by phone, press *9 to indicate a desire to comment. If you're joining by Zoom, press the raise your hand button. And please voluntarily state your name for the record. Seeing no public comment.
Hold on.
Come on,
Yeah,
Ted.
You have to run.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Woody. Thanks, Lori. Thanks for our meeting on Monday. I really appreciate, you really cleared a lot of things up for us, and you're very accommodating. So I appreciate both of you in representing us in North County, because that's very important to me. My name's Joanne Thornton. I've lived in Cool for over 30 years. I was actually really excited to see this traffic study done, really excited because it was so needed. And the county doing it, I knew it would be, I was hoping it would be really, instead of dealing with state parks, who is like way out in La La Land, I was hoping it would be really focused, you know, in our North County. And I've always tried to be a voice of our divide area residents, first with the ASTR plan, which I, like Lori said it perfectly. I bent her ear before she even took office when, and she was very supportive throughout that whole thing, very supportive. She got the first town hall meeting by state parks way back in then.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, the divide area residents are really frustrated, partly because state parks put a real bad taste in our mouth. They didn't do anything to help protect our community. And in fact, just kind of said, well, screw you, you know, we want to put campgrounds down at the bottom of the canyons, you know, just all kinds of crazy things. So it really put a bad taste in our mouth as far as government and how we are represented on the divide. So we want our voice heard. And you definitely heard this at the last town hall meeting, loud and clear. This proposal right now, as it stands, that the outsiders brought in, what do you call them, consultants, it doesn't really represent the people who live here. and who have to live with the consequences of these actions. There are some good solutions to this proposal, but others definitely not. Much of the rest of the proposal will add to the congestion, not alleviate it around the confluence. And I'll give you some examples. 5 crosswalks, proposed 5 crosswalks across Highway 49 from the bridge going up to Auburn. Unofficial pullouts to do triple duty for parking, shuttle bus, and just a pullout for a slow vehicle. That's 3 duties for an unimproved pullout right now. Narrowing the highway lanes on the bridge, creating sidewalks to encourage pedestrian traffic on both sides of Highway 49 on the bridge and south of the bridge. So this just names a few. And I was glad to see Caltrans actually put in some afterthought on that. So that's their thing. You know, the consultants identified 4 goals in their study, one of which is evacuation. Fire evacuation on the divide is our public safety #1. Nothing in their proposal dealt with that. We have 3 escape routes within the first 4 miles of Cool, each of which are 2-lane roads. When 49 gets blocked in the canyon, we are left with 2 evacuation routes. Frequent blocks due to the water, medical emergencies, and oversized trucks are a big issue. With an average of 9,000 vehicles per day going through that canyon, it should be kept absent of blockages as much as possible and absent of congestion as much as possible. No solution to that was addressed. Yes, the big trucks, I agree, that is a solution if it can happen. Currently, 1 million visitors come to this area per year. With state parks is expecting 1.5 million in the next few years to this area. State Parks has done nothing to safely accommodate them, nor do they show any interest. Heck, just last weekend, perfect example, you got pictures, people were calling me, have you seen 49? I've been here so many years and I've never seen it this bad. People were parked so far up the canyon that it was so dangerous, and it was incredible. And they sent me pictures and I went, holy crap, you know, and it was just bad. It was really bad. And this is what, in end of January. But because it's a beautiful day after all the rain, you know, people are out, but it's not just peak months now, it's kind of year round. So, and people were noticing that no state parks were handing out tickets, because all this parking where they're not supposed to be is no parking, and state parks can hand out a $71 ticket. CHP can hand out, I don't know how much their fine is, but I believe it's probably more. But, you know, so there's no enforcement. CHP doesn't want to go there. In fact, Mike Howard told me state parks, when they go to write a ticket, it takes them about 15 minutes to write 1 ticket per car. He said CHP takes them about 45 minutes to write 1 ticket. And I said, why is that? He says, well, because they probably have to run the license plate, see if it's stolen, if it's current registration. You know, they have a lot more work to do because they're a different entity. And so they don't really like to go down there, you know, that's just the way it is. So as of 2 o'clock last Saturday, after I got a few phone calls and a couple pictures, no tickets had been written by state parks, because they'll be sitting there right on the window as you drive by. And that's probably, you know, I like solutions, and I've always tried to offer them, and I will continue to try and offer them. There's a lot of us who have a lot of history, and we have a lot of intimate knowledge that can really help give positive solutions. It's not like we don't want the people down there. It's just, it has to be managed in a way that it's safe. And our safety, in my mind, comes first over the visitors. The shuttle buses, yeah, they can evacuate down in the shuttle. Cell tower, yeah, they can get cell service down in the Confluence. There's no idea of putting cell service up on the divide. There is nothing about that. And I'm thinking, well, that's because this is not their issue, but it is. We on the divide have to deal with this every single day. So I believe it's imperative that this county traffic study puts our divide safety and concerns at the forefront. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments.
See, no
Nope.
further.
Oh, wait, nope,
Are you
wait,
coming,
whoop,
Heather?
whoop.
Come on up.
Thank you, Lori, for having that meeting with Caltrans to get the parallel parking done. That was fun. I'm gonna just jump to this bridge, the narrowing of the bridge. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this bridge and have driven on it. It's pretty narrow already. 2 trucks, semis passing each other. It's pretty tough. You put pedestrian walking on one side. And am I right? The other side as well?
No, just on the north side.
One side. That narrows the bridge even farther. I don't think this is right. Someone's going to get killed. And I don't know why, and it may be funding, that a walking bridge can't be put up. Maybe it is money, but I understand that we have a tunnel for wildlife to go under the freeway that costs millions. And no deer has ever been spotted going through that dark tunnel. So there was a waste of money to me. It's probably going to be a homeless camp as far as I'm concerned at some point. So I think the money needs to be spent much more carefully, and a walking bridge should be considered instead of narrowing that bridge. I'm going to jump to another thing, is the Dollar General. We had a Dollar General truck stuck on the north side of 49 problem area just a week ago. Held up traffic for good 4 hours. And it took CHP the amount of time that it takes them to get there. Something tragic could have really happened there, other than just the truck being stuck. A resident, anybody that is legally driving on that road, could have come around that corner and hit that truck. That's the end of him or them. That's their life over because of a violation of Dollar General. And Dollar General's trucks are marked Dollar General. So they're not a contracted truck. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe they are. And their condition of having their store up and cool was that they would travel from Highway 50 through Lotus, down Lotus Road to 49 and over to Cool, and not take the route over on Highway 49. Now, these truckers need to be fined, or better yet, Dollar General should have their license revoked temporarily until they get this together, get this straightened out. And that's perfectly legal to do that. It may take some time, but it's perfectly legal to do that. Because I know any business owner up here, if they had a restaurant, winery, or whatever they had. If they were in violation, they would be shut down. Health department would say, no, you're closed tomorrow. Or whoever's in charge. I don't know who's in charge of the Dollar General, who approved it. I don't think it was the Board of Supervisors, it was what, I'm not sure. Anyways, CHP can't really do much because they don't have, as far as giving a fine out, a ticket, it's not in their code book. I don't think it's that they're ignoring it. It needs to be in their code book that they can give a ticket. And these truckers can be fined. And I'm talking about the other truckers that violate the length coming up. But I'm pushing for Dollar General to have their license revoked until they get it together, because that is part of the agreement for them having that store in Cool. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I think we've exhausted the public in our room here.
Seeing no further public comment from the boardroom, now taking public comment from Zoom participants.
Is there anyone?
No? Okay.
There's no additional public comments.
Thank you very much. We'll bring that back here. I want to talk about the Dollar General. I actually was part of those discussions. I'm not proud of it anymore. Honestly, I think the ink had not, I think the paint had not dried on that store, and a truck got stuck in that canyon. And I was so angry when I saw that. And I agree. I think, I'm assuming that's code enforcement, because that's really not a traffic thing. It's a code thing. You'd have to go back to their agreement and see what's going on. I'd like to have someone whack Dollar General hard. You've probably looked into it.
Of course. I will tell you, we are working on it. It's not as straightforward as I would have hoped.
Yes.
And that's kind of where we're at with county council and legal and all of that. So yes.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
as far as I can say.
Yeah. And my understanding of I'm sorry, go ahead. You can add something. You look like you wanted to add something.
I'll wait until.
Okay. My understanding of enforcement of the particular, the kingpin, the rear, the 45 foot or whatever that, it's advisory. It's an advisory thing. And so it's not really something that you could write a ticket on a truck if you saw it in the wrong lane. Like if they were having trouble making their turns and they're in the wrong lane,
yes,
CHP can give those people a truck ticket. They can, but they have to see it. I mean, you have to visually. But if you had a prohibition for certain size trucks in the canyon, if you saw a truck coming out of the canyon that was bigger than that, then you could give them a ticket. And that's a different issue. And I would be all in favor of that, because I'm sorry, it's not a good idea to have those trucks in the canyon.
That's the number one recommendation, right there. Number one, we want to go do that as soon as this thing is adopted. We're going.
Yeah.
We're on it.
Yeah. And with some deference to CHP. If this district is like all the districts, and they are totally under personnel, they have hundreds and hundreds of open vacancies for patrol people that they cannot fill.
Mm-hmm.
And so my guess is this district is probably impacted like all the other ones in California, that they just don't have the people out there. So the odds of you actually seeing somebody violating one of these rules is pretty slim. Have they looked into hanging a pedestrian item on the 49 bridge? Because that's really the other.
Thanks for teeing up my next comment.
Okay, good.
Just to address that, so we did consider a cantilevered pedestrian and bicycle crossing on the west side of the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
That would be obviously a higher cost solution than narrowing the travel lanes and adding, changing the striping on the bridge. But I also wanted to mention that the pedestrian area on the bridge would not be a concrete raised sidewalk. You would simply restripe the bridge to allow for a safe space on the east side of the bridge.
Right.
So you wouldn't limit if you had oversized vehicle like a dozer or something for a response to a fire, they would have the ability to use the full surface of the bridge without having the the raised concrete sidewalk.
Right.
So it wouldn't in fact change the available space for
Right.
those emergency vehicles that may need to be oversized to access
Right.
the canyon. That was something that came up in the public workshop. So
Right. And it is not a perfect, in fact, it's not even close to perfect solution. One of the inside baseball things about traffic lanes, though, is when now granted, that's a very slow speed environment, at least if you're going north, because there's a stop sign at the end. Now, people do start to hot foot it once they get to the other side of the bridge if they're going towards Placerville. But if you narrow the lanes, people drive slower. That is traffic 101. So anyway, yes.
So when you looked at the cantilevering the bridge, what was the result of that?
well, that's something we would look at as a long-term solution.
Mhm.
Again, far more costly than interim improvements on the bridge. We did that with the Weber Creek Bridge on Highway 50, where there's a cantilevered. What was the price tag on that? Okay.
Yeah.
So probably north of 3 million or somewhere in that ballpark. That's what the Weber Bridge cost.
Yeah. It's just that it's a recreational hotspot. And so it's, it's not just another freeway. We're not just trying to, maybe look at certain.
Yeah, but I think Woody, I think safety should be the number one priority, especially the pedestrians, because I've seen that. Lori's seen it. I've driven that bridge quite a bit too. And it's really narrow, and people walking on that with their baby strollers and everything. I mean, you got to slow down and my truck is so wide, being a dually, you really have to slow down because you're afraid you're going to hit somebody. Very, very dangerous.
Yes.
So yeah, I was going to ask you about that actually, because the cantilever bridge to me is very appealing and a better solution ultimately. And the way that you have it proposed, and this is all proposed and, projects and stuff, recommendations that we have to look at further. So you have them kind of in a 0 to 5, and I know that that's also flexible, but what if we wanted to look at the cantilever bridge sooner?
Oh, yeah,
I mean, you have it
absolutely.
so far long-term,
Right.
how are we going to know how to approach these, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, so we would work with the county and Caltrans to prioritize that in more of the near term, and then identify active transportation program funding to support design and environmental and all the initial phases of that project.
Okay. And then the one with the restriping, totally understand. It's, I get what you're saying, narrower.
Yeah.
The thought is to take the 2 traffic lanes and move them to one side. So the pedestrians are only walking on one side, because right now you're holding your breath walking on either side. The whole thing's just, so if we were going to explore that striping thing, does that need to have is that considered a CIP that the public would engage in, or is that one more of a maintenance Caltrans
That would be a
project?
maintenance, a project that Caltrans could, that's more of a low cost solution that we could work with Caltrans to identify funding in their shop program.
Okay.
They would have to prioritize that, but
Okay.
we can work with them on
That
that.
one's a little more concerning. And then
Me.
John,
Yeah.
you mentioned the parking, and I'm not sure if this got explained enough in here. I'm a little wondering about that too. Is you're right. There's free parking on the south side.
Yeah.
On the El Dorado County side of Highway 49, and then actually 49 is all free. But the problem is that Forest Hill Road, which is a Placer County road, is paid parking. And so people literally, like you said, lose their minds trying to find a free instead of paying the $8 or $10, whatever it is. And so one of the things I really wanted to push for and explore, and I'm not sure it's clear enough in here, is it either needs to be all free or all free or fee.
Right.
All the same. And I'm not sure if that's clear enough in the recommendations. Can you just make sure
strengthen that
that's
to-
more clear?
Yeah, we can strengthen that
we-
to look at, to explore that with Caltrans first to see if they would consider it, and then
Yeah.
that
But that's
seems like it seems like it would be an easy thing to implement.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been involved in anything like that. So that would be a partnership with Caltrans first and foremost, and then also state parks. as well.
Right, but I just think that that's what's putting the extra pressure over on the south side, is that free, $10, what, it's like, come on. And then honestly, since there are other funding sources for the shuttle, perhaps I would like to see if we do get parking fee over on the south side, that goes to state parks for enforcement. We need a ranger down there. Whenever there are people there, we need somebody present. And I know that they don't have enough staffing, and I've talked to Mike Howard about that at state parks, and he did get a ranger or two, but it was for the whole area. And I really think they need someone focused here, because when there's consistent enforcement, the public learns, and with social media, the word will get out that there's full on enforcement. So I appreciate all of this. I really do. I want to be a little more hard-nosed about things. I almost said hard-ass, but hard-nosed about things. And, you know, in this enforcement, the parking, and I think that everyone here really likes the bridge idea. If we could pursue that, there's a lot of walkability funding out there and stuff that maybe we should look at.
Sure.
So I really appreciate everybody's comments here today. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just thinking, even on the shuttle, I know we had the pilot funded through SACOG for Apple Hill. You know, this may be something we could go to SACOG as well and look at on the shuttle side, see if there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, I think we could explore some opportunities for CMAC or other fund sources for a pilot for the shuttle.
Yeah. Anything else? Nope. All right. Thank you. That was a very good discussion. Yeah. Thank you. Very good report, Jim. Thank you very much. Appreciate your input.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
All right.
All righty. Here's an easy one. Let's see, the number 12, Federal Highway Administration Corrective Action, Mr. DeLoy.
Okay, thank you, Chair Cleary, Commissioners. This is a item that's been discussed since the spring of 21. This is hopefully wrapping it up with I would say a positive outcome, given the circumstances. The federal, just to recap, the Federal Highway Administration imposed a corrective action on Caltrans back in the spring of 21. That was presented to this commission in December of 22. Is that right? Yes, I think it was December of 22. Basically, the corrective action was a determination by FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, that only metropolitan planning organizations can have the authority and the ability to allocate congestion mitigation and air quality funds and service transportation block grant program, both federal fund sources, to jurisdictions under the MPO boundary. So that applies to all of the state of California, all MPOs in the state of California. The issue that they took with the way that we have been doing it, which was sub-allocating from Caltrans through SACOG to EDCTC. That is what they're not allowing to happen anymore, that sub-allocation. We initially pushed back with FHWA, saying that we felt our process was in alignment with the federal guidance. It's been a process we followed for 30+ years, and I argued that we have done a very good job of programming those funds based on the federal performance criteria that are tied to each fund source. But it was made clear in 2022 that the Federal Highway Administration was standing firm, and that we would no longer be able to get that sub-allocation. Understanding that, recognizing that, and accepting that, we worked with SACOG and Pulaski County Transportation Planning Agency over the last year and a half to come up with a process that we felt would continue to allow for EDCTC to be an active partner and manager of the project selection process and programming of those funds. We went through an iteration of, I don't know how many flow charts. I think this might be one of the most expensive flow charts in the state of California. We went through a number of iterations of this with FHWA and Caltrans, and landed on the one that is in your agenda packet today. We went from a flow chart that did not have EDCTC referenced at all, to a flow chart that had EDCTC and Pulaski County Transportation Planning Agency called out separately, and then the other 4 counties in the SACOG region were within one bubble in the flow chart. That wasn't accepted, and so we actually worked with SACOG to come up with this flow chart that you'll see that there's 6 individual boxes for each county's role in this programming process and project selection process. That was of some concern to SACOG initially, because it kind of divides up SACOG's 6 member counties, and they lose some control of the 4 counties as a whole. But this is the best solution, given the corrective action that I believe we could have reached. These 6 individual processes will flow under SACOG's overall funding round, but we will be responsible for working with the city and the county to select priority projects that are within our adopted regional transportation plan, that are consistent with the metrics for each funding source, and submit those to SACOG. And I would also add that we will plan to submit in excess of our historic average allocation. Maybe we submit 120 or 140% in project ask for the funding round, to make sure that we get somewhere close to our historic average. I just said a lot. I want to make sure I haven't lost anybody. Any questions so far?
I'm just looking at the flow chart. I don't know. It's like it's-
So we did present this flow chart to FHWA and Caltrans, and they verbally approved this process. I will say, the next steps is that SACOG will have to take this to their board for approval and submit it to FHWA, get that approval in writing and all that. I'm very, very confident that they will approve this process. And I will also say that we have programmed out both of those fund sources, CMAQ and SDBG, out to fiscal year 26-27. We knew that this was coming down. We want to make sure we locked in our projects and programming those funds as far as we could, and justify that. The next funding round won't happen until probably 25, that SACOG would administer this process that's in this flow chart. And between now and then, we'll be working with SACOG on their funding programming round working group to establish some of the more details and nuance that would go into this process. And so that'll be brought back to your commission for consideration over the next year and a half. And I would say we go through this process in 25 with the next funding round. If something occurs and we don't get anywhere close to our historic allocation, that's when we would want to look at some kind of a legislative lift or change to the federal guidance. But I think we should fare well given this process, and we'll continue to work with SACOG to lay this out.
It would be good to know the chair, SACOG, in 25.
That's a tremendous benefit to
That would be a
have
huge benefit.
Mayor Saragosa in that role, and vice chair role this year and chair next year.
I promised Mr. Delory I wouldn't do this too many times. I was back here. I worked for El Dorado County when CMAQ was made. And I remember having these very same discussions with them about how do we allocate the money. And of course, originally they wanted to kind of do this. And this is kind of how we worked it out, the way we've been doing it for decades now. My guess is that, and you would know more about this because you're actually doing this right now, a lot of what we're talking about is what a lot of those counties do already. What we're going to do is what they're doing. And if memory serves correctly, the counties kept a real close, and the cities, everybody in SACOG kept a real close eye on how that money was being allocated. And it kind of does this, because sometimes there's a project in one part that needs more money, but it does this. But at the end of the day, they're all real close to what, if you were to allocate money to these jurisdictions. And we'll just have to be very vigilant, and I know we will be.
Absolutely.
And to keep an eye on it. But, SACOG is a okay outfit for the most part. And, I'm not anticipating anything, but on the other hand, we keep an eye on it.
And did you say in that narrative that SACOG's been involved in all these iterations of this flow chart, so that you don't expect you're not going to be surprised?
And I'd like to jump in as the county's rep on SACOG. I just want to thank SACOG for being a very collaborative partner with EDCTC and Caltrans on making, this fit as well as we possibly can, for our rural counties as well as for SACOG as a whole. And I think what you've landed on, is a really good model where the rural voice is, strong in each of the jurisdictions. And that's what we always want. We want to, be able to, because we know what projects, we know what our community needs, and we have the strongest voice in what those priorities are. And so having a model that honors that rural voice or that local voice is really critical. And SACOG has been a very collaborative partner in that process. And I'm grateful for Michael's leadership within SACOG. And in addition, I will be on the funding round working group to make sure that as we move forward and develop that it works it works for all of us.
So are you saying the board's seen this already?
The board has been involved.
Involved.
I'll let you
That's
pick
what
that.
because there's
Yes.
staff that's works on things and then there's boards.
This is
so
not new to SEGCOG. Yeah.
That's why I wanted to
Yeah,
know.
there's been a lot of individual discussions between members in Placer County as well with James Corliss,
Okay.
with our executive director, and to really get buy-in from everybody as we move forward. So I anticipate, the board signing off on this as we go forward. And I've mentioned to our city council, and I've said at SEGCOG, this is the same process that SCAG is going through and others. I mean, there's much bigger fish out there that are going to have to get the same types of sign-offs because of, LA County and San Bernardino and Riverside and those that have their own transportation commissions. If they say no to us, they're going to be saying no to all those folks as well. And it's opening up another huge can of political worms that way. So I feel, I won't say that it's going to happen, but I feel pretty good that we're going in the right direction.
Cool.
How we're doing this.
Good to know.
I would agree with that. And if things get hinky, it won't be SEGCOG. It'll be, not to go to, woo things, but yeah, if things get hinky, it won't be SEGCOG. It'll be an advocacy group. It'll be one of the other jurisdictions. It'll be somebody else that's going to try to reach in there and go like this a little bit. And that's where the problem's going to be. It won't be with staff down there.
No,
They'll be
they've been
fine.
an excellent collaborative
Yeah.
partner, and our executive director, Mr. Deloria, has been a tremendous advocate for us. And I
Yes.
really want to thank everybody for you've been involved in this in a really big way. And
Yes.
the success of this is much to your collaboration
Okay.
on this.
Very good. Anyway, thank you very much. Anything else? Nope. Okay, great. Executive Director's Report. I will ask the director because it says, anyway, go ahead.
All right, I'll try to keep this brief. The first page of the report, you have the Greater Placerville Wildfire Evacuation Preparedness, Community Safety and Resiliency Plan. That project is moving along very well in partnership with Ken Pimlott from the county and Mark Egbert from the Resource Conservation District. Dan Bolster is managing that. The next coordination meeting is scheduled for Monday, February 13th. We're going to talk about the public outreach and engagement for that effort then. Under that, the US 50 US 50 Corridor System User Analysis Investment Strategy and Access Control Action Plan. The second public workshop for that was held on January 19th. That was focused on the investment strategy and presented future options to reduce the congestion. The next workshop is February 16th at 5 p.m. Where's that? Sorry, I have an error here. It's 5:30 and it'll be virtual, and we'll have that information on the project website. Next page, the Caltrans section, Camino Safety Project wrapped up last year. That was a long overdue project and a long project to deliver, but really appreciate the safety improvements on that project. I have been reaching out. Commissioner Thomas has reached out to me to look at some potential mitigation for loss of visibility to some of the businesses that are up there with that large median barrier. Some folks don't know that there's wineries and other things on the north side of Highway 50 when they're traveling east. So we may look at working with the county and Caltrans to increase that signage. The bottom of that page, on page 2, the state transportation legislation and funding, the governor's budget proposal came out on the 10th of January. Identifying a $22.5 billion shortfall. I'm sure you all are aware of that. His administration has identified a balanced plan to reduce or to close that budget gap. The proposal does not include a withdrawal from the state's reserve balances unless we see a sign of recession this spring, then they will certainly implement that. The budget does retain a $44 billion infrastructure package, so that has not been touched. Under state legislation, there's a couple of bills that we're tracking. All the bills that we're tracking are included, but I'll just mention a couple. AB 6 Friedman, that would require any regional transportation planning agency to prioritize projects that align with the state's climate action plan, that even if those projects are funded with local sales tax measure funding. So the county doesn't have a local sales tax measure, but the city does. So that would require prioritization of those projects, even if they're locally funded. On the page 4, AB 16, AB 53, and SB 5 all are addressing the adjustments that are made to the gas tax every July 1. Under Senate Bill 1, that Senate Bill 1 imposed an inflationary adjustment to the gas tax to keep that purchasing power happening, going forward. And this would adjust that to one of them would eliminate it altogether when it imposes an impact to low income and middle class families. And SB 5 would put a maximum increase on that of 2%. The bottom of that page, the federal transportation legislation and funding. The president signed in December the 22, the $1.7 trillion IIJA or transportation bill. It's broken out into 12 appropriation bills. The commission staff is working with the county and the city and Eldorado Transit. I'm on page 5 now, top of page 5, to identify projects to submit for all the various funding programs that are available under that bill. Just to mention a couple, there's Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, or better known as RAISE. Those are large capital projects of regional significance. Same with the mega projects. There's 15 billion available there. One of interest is promoting resilient operations for transformative, efficient, and cost-effective or cost-saving transportation or project or protect program. That would look at funding for evacuation routes and other emergency response and resiliency projects. The last one on that list on page 6 is the Rural Service Transportation Grant Program. There's $2 billion available, and that is specifically for rural projects of significance. So those are all the programs. We're looking at some of those and looking at the county and city projects that align with them, and we'll be submitting for any of those competitive programs as they become available. That wraps up my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So the one about evacuation routes.
Yep.
Who's going to be taking the lead on gathering where those? I have 2 communities that don't have, second way out. That whole ingress egress thing are these potential places to get that funding?
Right. So we would look to the county to identify those capital improvement program projects that could be, queued up to go after these funds. Something like Protect. I think we would want to put together a package of projects.
Yeah.
And prioritize those over a number of programming cycles to be competitive for those, those evacuation planning funds.
So, but who, is it going to be the commission? Is it going to be DOT? Is it
we would work with Raphael and his team to identify those projects and help them submit the application, because they would ultimately be the delivery agency, or in the case of the city of Placerville, we'll work with Rebecca Neves, the city engineer, and identify those projects.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions for Woodrow? I have one, or it's more of a comment. One of the things that's interesting about the state budget, back when I was in those seats, they used to just come in and raid the state highway fund on a regular basis. And that's why there was frequently no money there, a lot of IOUs. They don't do that anymore because of SB 1. Yes. Right. So one of the benefits of SB 1 was it kept them out of that pot of money to some degree. There's still shenanigans, but yeah, they would just go eviscerate the state highway account to balance budgets. And that was everybody. Every governor that I've ever known did that.
And SB 1 also backfilled the heavy vehicle truck fee balance that had been moved to other purposes. SB 1 backfilled that over a period of a few years.
Yeah. So one good thing about SB 1. Okay, great. Thank you. Yes.
I forgot to mention one thing on those federal programs. The Biden administration did implement a new policy, and that is Justice 40, and that means 40% of all the funds in every one of those programs goes to disadvantaged communities and a focus on equity. So we've seen it at the state level, we're seeing it at the federal level, just the environment that we're in now.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right. Final one, South Lake Tahoe, Caltrans, commissioners' comments. Cody Bass. Not here. Good. Alex, no, there's no Alex. Well, we got somebody from Caltrans.
Jenna Matsumoto.
Okay. That's why you're here.
Jenna Matsumoto from Caltrans.
Thank you very much.
Didn't you already get an earful of Caltrans?
Yeah.
Today?
Yeah, Jenna Matsumoto on behalf of Alex Fong. I don't have any updates to provide, but I'm open to taking questions and taking them back if needed.
Actually, I have a comment. I'd just like to thank you, and Caltrans for continuing to work with us on the Camino Safety Project and engaging with us on looking at signage on both, the eastbound and the westbound signs and making it work for our community. And those efforts are ongoing, and I really appreciate you engaging with us on that.
Yes, they're definitely ongoing, and we've been providing updates to Woody. So
yes, we
as soon
appreciate
as we
your
know more,
coordination.
we'll let you guys know.
We appreciate your coordination and cooperation with that.
No problem.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for also, Woody, looking into 49 South.
Another
Because
plug
there's,
for
yeah,
49
that's another
South.
big issue.
Yeah.
And
Well
I'm glad
done.
you're addressing that. So good.
Very
Yeah.
well done, sir. Getting those plugs in.
Oh,
for
you
49
bet.
South.
Got it.
There you go. Gotta love it. Okay, is there anything else? Okay, thank you very much. The commissioners have,
Okay,
we've
thank you.
talked a lot.
Thank you.
We've talked a lot, but do we have any more comments to make?
Two commissioner comments.
John, you got anything to say? No? Okay.
He wants to
he's
go
good, thanks.
surfing, man.
Yeah.
I have two brief commissioner comments.
Okay.
Like I said, I attended the CalCog briefing on behalf of the El Dorado County Transportation Commission last week. And one of the main things is that they are pushing hard to advocate for changes in remote meeting laws, recognizing that, any of us that serve on city councils and board of supervisors are a part of many regional boards and commissions. And especially in the rural regions that have to travel distances to attend an hour or 2-hour meeting, that the move toward solely in-person meetings is just not practical in order for us to conduct the state's business and coordinate across our vast state. So CalCog is pushing for exceptions to those remote meeting laws. Perhaps one of their suggestions is to keep the current rules in place for local meetings, city council, board of supervisors meetings, but enable remote meetings for the larger regional boards and commissions.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
So I
Very,
appreciate their
very, very
advocacy on that,
helpful.
because that's a real challenge for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. For example, John, would not be possible for you to get here. So the last thing is I'd like to give a shout out to Dan Bolster. I attended the SACOG Regional Planning Partnership meeting last week, and Dan presented on the Greater Placerville Wildfire Evacuation Preparedness, Community Safety, and Resiliency Plan. That is a mouthful. But Dan, you did a fantastic job, and I always love when El Dorado County is front and center at a regional level, showing the good work that we're doing, especially in light of these larger issues like wildfire and evacuation and resiliency that have captivated the West. And so I love that El Dorado County is front and center. And Dan, you did a fabulous job presenting to the SACOG partnership. So really appreciated that and wanted to give a shout out to you.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. And your presence there was appreciated also.
My pleasure.
Well, unless somebody else has something else to say, I think we leave it on a high note. And adjourn this meeting. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you next month.
Bye, John.
Thank you all. Bye.
Aloha.
See you, John.
Surf's up.